I would then open the Tuesday, January 9th planning board meeting. It is 6:04 PM. And first, we're going to do administrative items, and we are being recorded through this. And first would be administrative items, Inheritance Lane, file number 23-010C-RRL for a surety estimate.
Yep, so Derek had to postpone his site visit due to the weather, so we don't have a surety estimate at the moment. We'll have it ready for you next meeting.
Okay. All right, so is anybody here for that? Okay. Next would be 435 Old Harbor Road special permit. The applicant has asked for a continuance and a time extension for their application.
This item actually needs to be struck from the agenda just because it's not a special permit.
Okay.
It's a continuance request, and that's listed under 645. So we'll address that later on.
Okay.
In the meeting.
Forget that. Okay, so the next items are at 6:15, a public hearing, but it isn't 6:15 yet. So we will go on to
Let's report.
the planner's report.
Mine is a short one, surprisingly. The only thing I have to report on for this meeting is I'm working on a Mass Trails grant application with the Bike and Walking Path Committee. We're looking to request approximately $60,000 to get together some preliminary engineered plans to connect Westport to the Ketchikan Rail Trail and Fall River.
Quackashan.
I'll get it right eventually. And we'll connect from Fall River to Old Bedford Road. So just a small stub to initiate our piece of this trail. We do have support from the South Coast Bikeways, and they'll be providing a small amount of match funds, $5,000 for match. And this is part of a larger regional and multi-state project to connect the Cape to Rhode Island, all on one contiguous bike trail. Obviously, it's going to take a long time and be done in various segments. So we're just initiating one of our segments here from Fall River. So I can show you a map where this segment is. It's actually outlined perfectly here. You can see where it gets lighter. That's where the rail trail in Fall River, the terminus is, and it will looking to get preliminary plans to extend from that lane over to almost the intersection with Old Bedford Road there.
Okay, so then it'll cross Route 6 and go up between the two hotels and under 195.
Yeah, so in the long run, the goal is to then have a connection on Sanford Road. That will go up to Sanford Road, and then over towards Dartmouth eastward. This is a natural terminus right here because of the planned improvements MassDOT has for Route 6. To upgrade that corridor, they will include bike infrastructure on Route 6 when they complete that project. So that's,
So
a natural stopping point.
When they move from there to Sanford Road, are they going to go on the rail or are they going to go on Route 6?
On Route 6, I think, is what is currently conceptualized.
Okay.
We want to encourage bike traffic on Route 6.
Well, not currently. I mean, it's all part of a larger initiative. So when there's bike infrastructure put in, I think then it would be appropriate to encourage bike traffic on Route 6. There would also need to be, as part of MassDOT's plans, there's going to be traffic calming as a component of that to keep the speeds slower. So it's a little bit more of a comfortable experience for bikers. But as of right now, we're just going to work on this stub extending from the existing trail. And I can pull up a Google Maps image too. You can see it better. So you can see right here, this is where the Fall River Trail terminates. And so we just be connecting from this location here, approximately
And the 65,000 does the engineering.
the preliminary engineering. So it's, kind of more conceptual level plans that then we would then use to go and secure permitting and other funds to actually build it.
Who owns that land?
That is something that I'm trying to determine. So, and that's going to be a really critical component to this application. I've heard that MassDOT owns that right of way. But our assessor's card says that it's still owned by the railway. So that's something that before we even submit anything, we'll have to work that out. If the landowner, if the landowner is not game to install that infrastructure, the project is not going to happen.
It is owned by the Commonwealth,
Okay,
and
so maybe our,
this is the residuals of the New York, New Haven, the Old Colony Railroad, and the state acquired all of those right away.
so I'll just have to get confirmation from our assessor's office that it, maybe the assessor's card just hasn't been dated yet.
Mike did, I think Florida already extended the piece down there, so you might want to look into what they did to figure it out from there.
Yeah,
It's probably just an extension, just as,
Yeah, I think it was only built a couple of years ago too.
yeah, okay.
follow it just with Fall River.
Okay, thank you. And is there an assistant planner's report?
I have a report for Rosewood Lane, but not,
Not anything else? Okay. Then correspondence?
There is a handful of correspondence from the zoning board of appeals.
It's a bunch of decisions.
There is a notice of a decision for an accessory apartment at 18 McKinley Street. A notice of a dismissal of administrative appeal of a,
435 Old Harbor.
yeah, it's notice of dismissal of an administrative appeal for 435 Old Harbor Road. It was a somewhat of a preliminary notice of the permitted land use on that property. So the ZBA dismissed it. And there's a couple of abutter notifications for a stop work order. I believe, okay, at 2015 Main Road, so this is the large retaining wall.
Right.
Off of Main Road, and the second abutter notification is for a, looks like a setback variance for a single family dwelling.
All right, we still have a couple of minutes left, so We have travel and training reimbursement. For Mr. Burris, reimbursement for miscellaneous travel and Serpent tip and PFAS symposium training, November, December for $61.48.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we, approve the reimbursement and expense to, Michael Burrows.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And, by the time I'm done addressing it, we'll be at 6:15. So we're having a 6:15 public hearing for Rosewood Lane, file number 23-039C. Request by the applicant to consider a definitive subdivision plan entitled Rosewood Lane, located on the westerly side of Gifford Road between 225 and 247 Gifford Road, map 29, lot 22C, proposing to divide the property into 2 lots.
All right, good evening, board members. My name is Emmanuel Pacheco Jr. I'm here tonight representing Emmanuel Pacheco Senior regarding the project guidance. We're here tonight seeking approval for definitive subdivision using a railroad design. We've previously come before the board during a pre-application consultation and preliminary plan review. So what's changed since the last time we've met? So since we've met the last time, we've expanded the area easement here for the 2 lots in the elongated basin that we were initially designing. So basically what we have is a rural road, a Y-shaped rural road, which we're going to be requesting a waiver for across this rural road to divert the water into a drainage swale. This is where we carry the water back to the detention basin back here and overflow to the wetlands. Provided all lots will have sufficient upland area and lot size to conform to regulations. And that's what we have so far. Any questions regarding design?
I think we have a report from Andy.
Yeah. Yep. We also did get the peer review back from field engineering on late Friday. But as far as mine goes, the subdivision name Rosewood Lane is only located on the cover sheet of the plan set. The north point is missing on sheet 2 of the existing conditions plan. Boundaries, date, scale, and legend and locus are present on all sheets. I'll just read the stuff that is not there. The width of Gifford Road is not marked on the plan set. Or the sidewalks are proposed or existing development along Gifford Road. And the width and location of the proposed rural residential lane is shown on the plans. The 2 lots are numbered, not labeled in sequence as parcel A and parcel B. Both lots do conform to the zoning bylaw and meet the minimum frontage requirements with over 150 feet in frontage and have adequate area of over 60,000 square feet and more than 30,000 square feet of uplands. Some items I wrote that should be addressed by the consultant engineer, and they were. Let's see. The signature block is only located on page 3 in the upper left-hand corner, so it should be on all pages of the plan. The wetlands line was flagged and delineated and accepted, and is approved by the Westport Conservation Commission. Comments from the conservation agent state that the wetlands line is approved. However, no work within the 100-foot buffer zone has been filed or approved yet. The approximate proposed building envelopes have been provided. However, there's no mention of cellar floors and elevations. The Board of Health has not yet commented on this project. Comments forthcoming relative to results of test pits in compliance with state sanitary codes. I think they actually did end up commenting and said they had no comment. There's no activity within the state highway layout that's proposed. The proposed dead-end residential street connects to Gifford Road, is Y-shaped turnaround. The proposed street is not over 1,200 feet in length. And there is no practicable way for Rosewood Lane to connect to any other streets, as the parcel is surrounded on both sides with residential properties and abuts Route 88 towards the back, but does not have access. The proposed drainage easement in the rear of the parcels is 15 feet in width. There's no temporary construction easement proposed on the plan. There are no marked natural or cultural features marked on the plan. The property is currently vacant, with the majority of the land clears towards the front along Gifford Road and wooded in the back where the wetlands are located. There's no evidence of stone walls, cemeteries, community assets, or historic locations. As I mentioned, the wetlands have been delineated and flagged, but any work like you have on the plan needs to be approved by conservation. So my recommendation after reviewing it, we didn't have the consultant review at the time. We have it now from field engineering, but I think that the things that the consultant review points out, I would still recommend continuance of this project to another date and time certain to allow for the applicant to submit revised plans and address all of field engineering's comments.
Could you read those comments?
Again, yep. Here, Mr. White in Field Engineering has completed the initial peer review for the proposed definitive subdivision plan and supporting documents for the Form C application for the above referenced project for compliance with the Town of Westport zoning bylaws, the Town of Westport Planning Board rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land, and generally accepted engineering methods. Our review is based on the following information as received by our office: the definitive subdivision plan entitled Rosewood Lane, prepared by Waterman Engineering Company, and the stormwater report prepared for Emmanuel Pacheco by Gorodetsky Engineering. The following comments are submitted for your consideration. The proposed subdivision is called Rosewood Lane as indicated on the title sheet. However, it is listed as a rural road on the plan on the remaining plan sheets. The road name should be labeled consistently in the remaining sheets of the plan set, including in each title block. Block closure calculations have not been provided to the office. Proposed utilities, including but not limited to electric, gas, telephone, cable, television, and all other services, shall be shown on the plans in accordance with the rules and regulations. The proposed profile of the roadway should be shown on the same sheet as the plan view, or a waiver from this requirement should be requested. In addition, the proposed roadway stationing should be provided on the plan view. While the construction plans need not be in recordable format, suitable space should be provided on all sheets in the set for the endorsement of the planning board. The form of performance guarantee for this project should be discussed with the planning board. An itemized estimate of the construction related costs associated with this project should be provided to the office. A construction detail for the required concrete or granite bounds in compliance with the rules and regulations should be provided on the plans. A street name sign designated and installed in accordance with the planning board and highway department should be shown on the plans. The proposed infiltration basin only has a containment berm that is 2 feet wide as shown on the plans. The Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook recommends a minimum of 15-foot wide berm on infiltration for access and maintenance. Given the scope and size of the basin, we feel that a 15-foot wide berm would be excessive. However, we do recommend a minimum width of 8 to 10 feet such that a vehicle could safely navigate the berm in order to access the outlet control spillway and level spreader in the case the basin is inundated with water. Detention and retention basins shall be located not less than 50 feet from the nearest property line. The proposed infiltration basin does not meet this requirement and a waiver will be required. And lastly, a permit from the Conservation Commission shall be required for any work proposed within 100 feet of the existing wetland on the property. This includes the work associated with the stormwater management system.
Okay, questions or comments from the board?
It says the zoning board hasn't had a chance,
The zoning board actually came back with no comment.
so they did review it.
Yeah, they don't have a.
Okay. Here you go, Jim.
That's just a copy of the comments.
Okay, any comments, questions? Okay, so Mr. Pacheco, do you understand the comments? Do you have a copy?
Absolutely.
You have a copy of
Yes,
it?
I actually sent a reply to all the comments this morning to Amy. Everything's going to be addressed. The only one I wanted to speak to the board with was item number 9, which is in regards to the width of the berm, the top of the berm, where the recommendation is possibly go 50 foot to 10 foot berm. You can pull up the next page of the plan set. So, proposed conditions. So our existing basin here, down a little bit, please. So what we're looking for is this basin here is approximately 2 feet high. So when you get to the edge, this berm is basically 2 feet high only. And that comes all the way around here to this area. Once you get to this area, the grade difference in the back is only about 3 foot grade difference from here to the basin bottom. I mean, I'm sorry, the basin top. The concern was access easement, to increase the top of this berm with another 8 to 10 feet. We do have access here, easy access, which is 9 feet to 10 feet, 9 to 11 feet here. It gives us easy access to the outlet structure in case we ever needed to maintain either the weir or the overflow structures. So that wouldn't be a concern for access. And again, it's a very shallow berm. This is basically 2 feet. And you can actually drive into this and also make modifications. Additionally, this basin was designed to hold only 10 inches of water. Anything over 10 inches is going to be discharged to the overflow structure. So there shouldn't be any extreme water in it at any time. If it's unclogged, it'll only be 10 inches. So I don't feel the need to have an 8 to 10 foot wide berm top, as we can access this easily from the side. But I was looking for the board's opinion on that.
I think we'd have to review it before we would decide for variance. So.
Sure.
Okay, so what is your time frame for the continuance? Amy?
Oh, I'm sorry. How quick do you think you can get calculations to field engineering and the revised plans?
Is this for the estimate?
It's for the estimate and lot closure calculations.
That a lot closure can be done quickly. The estimate will take a couple more weeks.
Okay.
It's 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, so I would think the first, well, let's see. There's February 6th, but we would need plans 2 weeks ahead of that to allow for field engineering to review. So I would say February 20th.
February 20th. I mean, the only one that would really impact us is the top of the basin.
Yeah.
That would change the whole design and drainage calculations and everything. So that's really what I want to speak to more with. But if you guys need more time to review that, I understand. I assume we'll address the next meeting, and then we'd have to redesign the pond and such.
So
Yeah.
how, I can't see it here, but how wide is the top of the berm now?
The top is only 2 feet,
2 feet?
but the height above the bottom of the pond is only 2 feet as well. It's a very small, short, shallow berm.
Yeah, just a comment.
This has been before us several times in various forms, and the solution to dividing these two properties, we had decided was a subdivision, and this layout, while it's a little subdivision, I think is compliant. So as far as creating the frontage necessary for these two lots, that stormwater basin is very small, and I would say that, you know, what I'm always troubled by is actually building and compacting. The notes are great, but if you think about what you gotta have at least a bobcat running on top of this thing to build it and maintain it. So if the top were 4 feet wide, you could make sure that you could run, you know, a bobcat over the top of it and dress everything. I'm not, as far as maintaining it, I think that, you know, getting a bobcat down that side, if you needed to, is okay. And the drainage approach in general is all right. This is strictly for two homes. So, you know, think about, you know, actually just building that berm so it's solid. I don't think, it definitely doesn't need to be 10 feet wide, and if it was 4 feet wide, you'd have plenty of room to build it.
Okay, so recommending change to maybe possibly 4 feet. Would the other board members agree to that, or?
I would say 4 or 5 feet. I mean, you're never gonna be precise anyway, but make sure it's not under.
Okay, sure, increase the size of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd also agree with that. I mean, where you have it right now, especially since it's gonna be just two houses and probably family members, I mean, you're probably gonna be wanting to mow that. And the way it is right now, you're probably gonna need more with a weed whacker. We should get a lawnmower around it and
Sure.
spot any problems before they arise. I don't think it shouldn't change its drainage calculations anyway, because it was gonna move it to the back.
I wouldn't think so.
So it would should probably change it slightly, not significantly.
So, what time, Amy?
6:45.
Okay, so could I have a motion to continue this public hearing until,
February 20th at 6:45.
So moved.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Can I actually have, before you guys leave, can I have an amended motion to do it for 6:30?
Sure.
Okay.
That's what I meant to say.
I second the amendment.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 6:30. So Valerie, are we going out live or?
No, just go live.
So but we're being video recorded? Okay. Okay, so next up is the 6:30 public hearing for the zoning bylaw, section 9.8, bed and breakfast. And with all the amendments listed in the agenda. Before we get started, I want to provide some context for where the regulations involved in this hearing come from. Westport's zoning bylaw contains a table of all the permitted uses in the town. In a footnote to this table, if a use is not listed in that table, it is not permitted. This was pointed out during a zoning board of appeals case involving a short-term rental, as short-term rentals are not referenced in the bylaws. The town's legal counsel advised that short-term rentals are therefore not allowed. Following these meetings, a short-term rental committee was formed to incorporate short-term rentals into the Westport zoning bylaws. There were many productive meetings held to build a zoning bylaw for short-term rentals with the goal of balancing the concerns between neighbors and short-term rental operators. We want to thank everyone who has attended meetings and provided feedback to the planning board and to the Board of Health staff. While the short-term rental committee has been working to develop this bylaw for some months, it has become clear that we are not ready to bring this bylaw to town meeting this year. The main problem is administration of this particular bylaw, which would include annual inspections and permitting. Unfortunately, as we've been working out the fine details of this bylaw, we're finding that the town does not have the available resources with its constrained budgets. Therefore, this particular bylaw will not be moving on town meeting 2024, pending the positions of my fellow board members. Please be advised that the town still has the guidance from legal counsel that short-term rentals are not currently allowed. Should the building inspector receive a complaint about a short-term rental, he would be obligated to begin enforcement action. To be clear, while we don't want to move forward with a bylaw we would have difficulty administering, it is still important that the town works out a framework for short-term rentals. We need to go back to the drawing board and develop a bylaw that works better for Westport with the current staffing constraints. In spirit of getting back to work on this bylaw, I want to open the floor to interested parties to provide the planning board feedback we need on how the short-term rental bylaw should function. We will do this after my fellow board members are able to express their comments here shortly. When providing us your concerns and solutions, please note that the planning board has a 5-minute limit for public comment. We also request to try to avoid repeat comments. So what I would like to do is to open it to the floor to comment on what you've seen for short-term rental bylaw, but I really don't want to get into the minutia of the wording of each of these bylaw amendments because they have no effect and will have no effect because we see no path for bringing it to town meeting this year. So, board? Planners?
I think that spelled it out. The administration of this bylaw has been a concern of mine, just as you had stated with the budgetary constraints that the town has. And so I think it's really incumbent upon us to go back to the short-term rental committee and work out what is a less burdensome way of administering this bylaw without having to resort to hiring new staff. That's really what's been the sticking point, is finding resources to get new staff to administer this bylaw. And we're just not there in our budgets across various departments.
Right.
And so we need to work out, a more streamlined process, I think, that would not require things like annual inspections, or maybe there's a different format for what those inspections may be or those annual permits may be. But as it stands now, the town really doesn't have the staffing to administer this. And this is something that's been discussed with myself and the planning board and staff and the Board of Health and the town administrator. And I think we all kind of agree here that we do need to rework this a bit, given the constraints that we have as staff.
And I think it's unfortunate that we have come to this point, having town council already pointed out that they are not allowed and not come up with a solution to administer these and regulate these. Because we know that there are a lot of homeowners that use Airbnb and other short-term rental companies to rent out their properties for some parts of the year. And to come to the point we are at, we have no solution. This isn't an end, and it really leaves everybody in limbo because we have no way to say they're okay. So if there's a problem, they're not an allowed use. So
You know, I mean, obviously, it puts us in a really tough position because we have to have something. People, I'm certain people are already signing up. I mean, there are people who may not be doing short-term rentals through Airbnb, but they might be doing it privately. They have people who contact them and say, we'd like to come rent your house next July for a week. And because this is the time right after Christmas, I find that people start making those calls. And this is an enormous hardship to those folks who depend on the income from the rentals. And I, for one, don't understand if we implemented, I mean, I've been on the short-term committee, short-term rental committee, so as Jim has said, there's been a lot of meetings, and I would give a lot of credit to the other members of the committee who formulated a pretty good bylaw. It's not perfect, and I know there's a lot of disagreement about it, but we need to start somewhere. And perhaps, you know, if our committee can go back and, as Michael was saying, find a way to simplify it, streamline it, reduce the burden of numerous, well, just find a way to streamline it so that we could get something through at town meeting this year. I think that's a priority in some way. I don't know. I don't have a solution at this
yeah,
moment.
no, I don't have a solution either. So it isn't up to me to say, and I'm the one that's saying this, that we can't do it. But it's not up to me, it's up to all of us, whether or not we send it over to the select board for inclusion in the town warrant. It is, I think, really unfortunate that, you know, to be clear, during this whole process, we have been doing the bylaw, assuming that one of the town boards can pick up the regulation of this bylaw, meaning that they could accept applications, go and inspect, determine that they have adequate space and whatever for doing this. And that was always thought, well, it wasn't always thought, it was thought to be the Board of Health would have the best ability to do that. And so when it's come down to crunch time, the Board of Health said, wait a minute, with all that, we don't have the staff to do it without hiring somebody. And the town administrator has said, well, we have budget constraints. We have probably 6 really important positions that we'd like to hire people for, and we can't because we don't have the money. And it's really a terrible thing. And so, and to be clear, we are getting taxes through the state for the ones that are registered with the state. So we get money from these short-term rentals to the tune of, I don't know how much money, but it still goes into the general coffer. It doesn't get used for this purpose.
So first of all, I apologize for not having a voice, but I still want to make some comments. Monday, I went to the transfer station, did my recycling, and got rid of garbage. When everyone was talking about cuts to the town, I said, boy, I hope they don't cut the transfer station. They said, they're never going to cut the transfer station because it makes money. Why does it make money? Because I pay, as do other people, a fee for the service that the town provides. It's a fee. You're allowed to charge a fee related to the cost of the service. And Westport is looking at making sure the fees cover the cost. Some of those fees are being increased. I want to challenge the assumption that we seem to be making that we are going to incur a service, an additional service, without charging a fee. Why is that? Why do we make that assumption? This industry of renting houses is an industry. There's a lot of money. Nobody thinks twice about paying a realtor. Nobody thinks twice about paying a cleaning service, although many people will do the cleaning and other things on themselves. Many people will not use a realtor because they have long-term tenants. But other charges are paid without anyone thinking of it. And yet, if the town is going to provide a service of inspection, of guaranteeing public health, we can't charge a fee. Why? I don't understand why we make that assumption. So I think we should consider that there be a fee for this that would pick up a part-time staffer for the Department of Health. I don't think it's reasonable in this time to say, Department of Health, you should incur this service without any additional staff. There are an awful lot of people gaining, and I think the industry should look and say, it's in our interest to see that this service is provided, because right now we're vulnerable. If someone calls the Board of Health and issues a complaint, we're illegal. The building inspector has to come and say, you cannot do this, you cannot make this money. The industry should be saying, we need to solve this problem. It's in our interest to have this bylaw passed. It's in our interest to have the ability to inspect and everything else that's in this bylaw. And I wasn't on the committee. I commend the committee for coming up with a good bylaw, and perhaps there's some tweaks that still need to be made about, should you have to, as we've done, do you have to be a local owner and stuff like that. But I don't accept the assumption that we should not have additional staff.
Okay, John, I think that you're right in one way, but I think that they have been thinking about putting fees on this, obviously. And what I this past week, I would say, I've been back and forth with Jim Hartnett, Michael, Bob Taylor, everybody that I can think of to try to figure out, okay, so how do we get this done by tonight so that we can do it? And I've spoken with Jim Hartnett a couple times. I think his feeling is that while we're going to charge a fee, we don't know if the fee that we establish is going to cover the total of the thing, and they have to, in the budget, they have to allocate the money for the position. And you can cross your fingers and hope that the fees are going to cover it, but that doesn't help with the budget process. But you know, the Board of Health has submitted a budget to the town administrator today that includes a part-time position to do this. And he has said that he probably would not recommend this budget to the select board. But he's not the final arbiter, it's the selectmen and the finance committee that are. So it really depends on what the rest of the board feels. I mean, if we go through with the public hearing and then we submit it to the select board for inclusion, it doesn't have to be right away. There's still time to try to figure out if we can fund the position. And see if we can get the select board and the finance committee to put it in the budget. But, and if that's what the board feels, then we should go through the whole process tonight. If they think it's a lost cause, then we should go and take comments, and then we can, you know, use it for future bylaw. But, so what is everybody else think?
Well, my feeling on it is, I know we're looking at it, John was looking at it as a public health, but really, this is really zoning. I mean, public health is part of it, and the Board of Health has a piece of it. I know the committee's worked, I'm not on this committee, I sat in a couple of meetings, but I know they've worked really hard on this bylaw, and we have nothing in place. So I wouldn't think that, I would support on the selectmen's side not putting this to town meeting because of the constraints. And one of the meetings I did sit in, I thought the enforcement agency should be the building inspector.
He doesn't have enough help either.
Well, he's needed help for a long time, and one of the things that I have noticed is put into the budget for next year, they're looking for an assistant building inspector, which will probably generate more revenue. I mean, the building department generates revenue and puts it back into the general fund. I would propose we go forward with this bylaw and say that, you know, the building inspector is responsible to enforce it, as they are now. I mean, if somebody starts, that's who's gonna go down there. The Board of Health's not gonna go down there if they get a complaint for noise. It's gonna be the building inspector. So he's gonna have to go down there anyway. So I would, and we're gonna need to have another full-time person in that office. So this could be a reason to generate some more revenue for that office to put a full-time position in there, and that's what I would push for. But I wouldn't say because we can't fund this, and, you know, I mean, at least put something in place, and then we can worry about how we enforce it. We'll enforce it the same way we're enforcing it right now. I mean, if we're gonna add more staff to the Board of Health, I mean, why not add it to the building inspector? He's already made the commitment for a part-time building inspector. Let's look for a full-time. That's my feeling, and that's what I can
But
support.
Manny,
on
that's
my end.
not our decision here at this table. Our decision is whether or not we're gonna hold the public hearing. The question is, how deeply do we get into the bylaw? And do we then afterwards, after some time, send it over to the Board of Selectmen for inclusion? So,
I think if we have a good bylaw, we should send it to the selectmen and try to get it on.
I agree.
Mr. Chairman, I sat on the committee and we've tried to craft we didn't do this because we didn't have anything to do. We got a zoning bylaw. A complaint comes to the town. Town says do something about the complaint. And we seek the advice of town council and said these uses are not allowed in the residential agricultural district and they're not listed in the bylaw. Anything that's not listed in the bylaw is not allowed. So so then we set out to say, all right, let's see if we can craft a bylaw. And where we ended after some debate is that we have a bylaw that allows it as of right, subject to a permit. And the way it's crafted now, the actual language that is the subject of this public hearing is that the Board of Health will issue a permit. So if we have a need, if there is a permit, then there needs to be someone who issues it, someone that keeps track of it, someone issues a permit number, someone does the inspection that's required of the permit. So someone in the town has to do that. Someone has to collect, has to arrange to do the fee and collect the fee. And is that, and how that fee is managed? Is it offset the actual cost, or is it like a lot of fees go into the general fund and the town operating, I mean, the town boards still operate with no money? So that's kind of how it works now. I mean, the fees the planning boards collect don't sit in the planning board, they go off into the general account. So that's where we stand. We have a bylaw that says that the Board of Health is going to do something, it's going to issue a permit, we're going to keep track of the permit, we're going to charge fees, and we're going to collect fees. And we don't have anyone to do that. So if we could work on this as it stands now. We could vote to send it to the Board of Selectmen, and they could decide whether or not it gets elevated to the warrant. But just as a piece of governance, does it make any sense for us to adopt? Because we have to vote to approve this. So we're going to vote to approve something that we can't administer, and we're going to stand up at the town meeting and tell the voters that. And if so, why should it get adopted? So that's where I stand. We could either sort of shovel this off to the selectmen, and they can decide what they're going to do with it, whether or not it makes it into the warrant. But if it made it into the warrant, how do we advise the town meeting on its operation? That we don't have an answer. So we need a bylaw. We need to do that. And if we don't act, the people who are now renting are going to do exactly what they did last year. They're going to rent. For a long time, I was on the beneficiary side of renting for a month at a time. But if anything goes sideways, I think, just as the chairman said, the town won't support it. The town will absolutely say that this is not a permitted use.
Mr. Chair, I think the way Bob has laid this out, excuse me again, is very helpful, because it lays out the different jobs of the different parts of town government. And as he said, we were given a job to do. We were given a problem to solve. And the committee, which I stress I wasn't on, I commend the committee and all of the different people who participated in that committee for solving the problem. It said, here's a bylaw that will solve the problem. And like any bylaw, once it's enacted, people will say, oh, this part doesn't work, and it'll get changed and made better. But in implementing the bylaw, there, as Bob explained, tasks that have to be done. But there are also resources from fees that can cover the administration. Now, our task was to solve the problem. I think the bylaw does that. Our task is not to hire people or administer government. That is the town administrator and the select boards. So I think what we should be doing is collecting comment and recommending to the select board, this bylaw solves the problem that you asked us to solve. Now, it's up to you, select board, to decide whether you think it does that, and whether you think you can take the resources that are in here in the form of fees and accomplish the task, because that's your job. That's not our job. But if we don't even do our job, which is to recommend the bylaw, then they don't even have a chance to do their job. So I think we do our job by recommending the bylaw after getting comment.
Well, I
Then
think,
they can do their job.
yeah, and I think the,
Can I make one comment that may help you?
one second, please.
This will help.
1
you
second,
decide.
please. I think that even if we do recommend the bylaw and it gets on the warrant, it can still be passed over at town meeting.
Yeah.
If it-
Town meeting
if-
has a,
If the funding doesn't
yeah, absolutely.
come, so,
Because town meeting has
I
work.
just have one comment that may help you decide whether you want to go forward with this to the select board. If you read our zoning laws, which you should because you are in charge of those, if the building, inspector of buildings shall be informed or has reason to believe that any provision of this bylaw has been or may be violated, he must act. I paraphrase. So you can't tell me that our zoning enforcement officer, our building inspector, does not have reason to believe that our zoning laws are being violated. So in my view, there should be a cease and desist to everybody who has a property listed on Airbnb, because he has reason to believe they are violating our zoning laws. So we have an enforcement issue regardless, and we have a money issue regardless, because really right now, Ralph needs to send at least 170 cease and desist letters to everybody listed on Airbnb.
thank you. So, I also would be in favor of going forward with this review of the bylaw, the public hearing, and go through the whole 9 yards with the minutia. And then if we want, then forward it to the Board of Selectmen. We don't do that tonight, but, so, Mr. Planner, do you want to start that process? Jared?
Yes, Jerry Catino, member of the zoning board of appeals and also a member of the short-term rental committee. I would just like to say, I think the comments that were more recently made are more to the point.
Wait.
I do have one quick comment. So we do have a quorum of the short-term rental committee in the audience tonight, and 2 of the members are also on the planning board. And so just to be mindful of open meeting law, there would need to be a meeting opened for the short-term rental committee in order for Mr. Catino or Ms. Ryden to speak on this matter.
Okay, so
What do you want to do about that?
who's the vice chair?
I am.
Huh?
I am.
Well, then,
So-
open the meeting.
All right, so this being,
And
what is the date today?
Meetings are supposed to be
January.
more than 48 hours in advance, so I don't think we can open the meeting.
Okay,
Can I
so,
get in as a citizen?
You're on the committee,
January.
so we would have to have 48 hours notice in order
So
to.
we are not deliberating as a committee.
Yes, there's a quorum of the committee here.
It's a quorum of.
There's a
short-term
quorum of the
rental
committee
committee,
here.
and you're debating the
And you're-
content of the proposed bylaw that the committee has drafted.
Correct.
What does it mean for the planning board? Does that mean you can't have yours because
Well,
we're here, we're talking about
This
this?
notice was a public
Well,
notice.
The
of
notice,
this.
we noticed the planning board, so the planning board's able to discuss. Because the planning board meeting has been duly noticed.
So my point is that because I happen to be on the short-term rental committee, which is not meeting tonight, I can express a.
That's a subcommittee of the planning board.
You're allowed to attend the meeting. You can attend this
I'm
meeting.
allowed to do what?
You can attend this meeting.
Attend the meeting. Yeah, but can I express my comment?
can you
Don't-
comment if he isn't deliberating?
Yeah.
I think he can comment.
I mean, I would not advise that, but.
So we're not gonna open the meeting.
Looks like that.
So by meeting all those months, and being a member of the committee, I've then had myself the opportunity to speak.
We,
Interesting, isn't
Mr.
it?
Chair, we still have time with this, for another, to add it to the next meeting, right?
What's the deadline for getting this to the select board?
It's the end of February, so there's still
There's
time.
still time to have another meeting.
An additional public hearing. There's still time to even have a working session. That's
then
the
another
case for
public
some
hearing.
other zoning
Right,
bylaw amendments that we're considering, and that those haven't been through the formal hearing process. So there's still time. The door's not shut tonight. There's still time to deliberate. The clock is ticking and it will be a short turnaround, but there is time.
So, Mr. Schmidt can speak about it, but the others can't, right?
As a member of the, because.
Planning board.
Right, he's on the planning board and this is on the planning board's agenda.
So, can Mr. Catino talk to Mr. Schmidt? And Mr. Schmidt can tell us?
I don't feel like we should, you shouldn't do a workarounds like that.
Okay.
Well, because it kind of looks like we're in error a little bit, and we should have included them. And I most definitely would not recommend pushing anything towards the selectmen until we have a meeting like that.
We're not anywhere near that. So let's begin the process here, so.
Jim, you don't have copies of that bylaw for people, do you?
I got one for you.
Here you go.
Thanks. Are we taking comments now from the public?
Not yet.
Okay.
We're gonna start step by step.
I know,
Jim, did you
I mean,
formally,
Jared just went up there, so I assumed that you were open for comments.
did
so.
you formally open the hearing?
I thought so.
You did? Okay. I just want to make sure.
Yep.
So to start, the purpose section of the short-term rental bylaw was, I need to, sorry, let's see this pretty well. The purpose section of the short-term rental bylaw states, the bed and breakfast and short-term rental zoning bylaw provides for administration and enforcement of Westport bed and breakfast and short-term rentals in order to protect the health, safety, and welfare of both the occupants of those rental units and the general public, and to maintain the quality of life in residential neighborhoods. This bylaw provides for the orderly operation of bed and breakfast and short-term rentals and prevents negative impacts on neighborhood character, housing availability, and house prices. This bylaw assists the Board of Health, the Building Department, Police Department, and Fire Department, and the enforcement of state and local health and safety laws. Does the board have any comments on this section?
I have none. I think it looks good. Are there any comments from the audience on this first paragraph?
Jim, You want to take audience section, or audience comments section by section?
Well, just section by section, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Just so we have a format here. Mr. Chairman? And when you come up to the podium, can you please identify yourself, name and address? Thank you.
And right now, we're talking about the first paragraph.
So yes, thank you, Katie, for having me tonight. I'm Nicole Plant, I'm owner of Green Realty. I am a taxpayer at 803 Main Road. I am not a town resident, just for the record. I just want to say this bylaw, I actually have a statement written here that when you read line, this bylaw provides an orderly operation of a bed and breakfast, short-term rental, and prevents negative impacts on the neighborhood and the character of housing available for the prices. I strongly disagree with that statement. It will greatly impact the pricing of the housing. It will actually, I had a whole section about that. This actually will hurt the local economy, and it's actually a negative impact overall, the way it is currently written. So I think that statement is kind of a little bit, it depends on what side you are on. It is not for the general public as a whole. It is not for the general taxpayer. It is a kind of a biased statement in my opinion.
You're talking about the first paragraph is a bias?
First part, the bylaw provides this orderly, so it says the part where it prevents negative impact on the neighborhood's character. I'd like to understand that, and I attended every single short-term meeting. The people in the room that were on the short-term committee basically saw my face every time. That statement says it negatively impacts the neighborhood and the character. I would like to know how that this short-term rental affects the negative impact and the housing availability. We need housing availability, so the way it's written is what I'm kind of getting at. It's kind of read the wrong way. And about the housing and the house prices. How does this affect housing prices? That's my question, and that had been to the committee before. But the way it is written, it is not really any error of how this is presented to the public.
It would be helpful for us when we're deliberating on this and rewording this after the public hearings is to have some idea of how you would change it, because myself, I don't see a problem with it, but I would have to look at it after your comments.
So I just think the way it reads kind of negatively to the character of the neighborhood. It's basically, the short-term rentals are actually sometimes an asset to the neighbors, to the families that come and visit, to help that elderly person next door that needs a place for people to stay. We don't have housing here. I think it's a positive thing. Most of the time, Westport is based on short-term rentals. Westport for 100 years has a history of short-term rentals. They've always had been, and the harbor, the point, and the beaches and along the Westport River, there's always been short-term rentals. We have only in the past couple of years been collecting money in the short-term rental tax and been making a revenue on it, but there have been years in history of people renting out their properties. So we need to make it a positive statement. I just think it comes across very negatively.
Okay.
And I think we should make it as we want to encourage, we do not want to hurt, because there's revenue in the economy here. We want to grow with it and bring people here. The way it's been presented, I think it's been presented negatively.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Section 9.8.2, general requirements.
Can I speak?
On the first paragraph?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
He asked, does it pertain to the first paragraph?
Yes.
The first section.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I understand that the committee has worked hard on this. I agree with that woman. I don't know anything about her, but I agree with her. That's subjective, that whole sentence. It's implying that somebody has made a judgment. And I don't think that's acceptable.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? That's first for the first one.
Yeah,
I didn't identify myself.
please do.
I'm Jerry Mullen, and I live on Cherry and Webb Lane. When my husband and I built our house, nail and hammer. It was a quiet, undisturbed neighborhood. And I read in the paper in the last, say, week, the shorelines. Oh no, it was a mailing, a private mailing, I guess, by a realtor, that very proudly announced that a house sold on Cherry and Webb Lane for $3 million. That changed my life, both money-wise. To the negative, by the way, I don't want the money. But to the negative, no one said anything about upsetting my life by these McMansions, is what I call them. Nobody has said anything. So I think this needs to be addressed, definitely. That's on my list.
Okay.
What's your street number?
168.
168? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't want that out in the public particularly,
We have to request it.
because I don't want any repercussions.
Okay. Michael?
We have more.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that.
I'm on 2042 Main Road, Westport. I called up Serpide and spoke with them, and they're doing a study on the impact of short-term rentals on waterfront communities. And then I wrote a letter to the selectmen, and I told them that Serpide's going to have it out in the spring 2024, and I feel like that should be taken into consideration and also another thing unrelated, the committee in drafting this first paragraph, I feel like it would benefit if some of the short-term, I feel we should expand the committee to include short-term rental stakeholders. In the light of Mr. Bullard, I kind of interpreted it as like no taxation without representation, you know. And you know, in one hand, we've got the town saying it's, you know, can't do it, it's illegal, and in the same light saying, hey, we're taking money, and it said somewhere 170 houses. So how does that happen? I mean, I understand how it happens, but you're saying it's illegal, and you're saying, hey, the town's taking money. Maybe we identify how much has been earmarked or maybe we earmark funds from that, and start to measure it. How much is brought in? And we could almost look as the whole thing of taxation with representation. If the people, basically the people that are stakeholders that are doing the Airbnb are providing that through their service, that revenue is going to the town, and they're not really getting anything from it. And so, you know, I'm all for having somebody there, though I think the short-term rental committee should expand to have stakeholders. If we were doing something on fishing, you'd want to have fishermen there as stakeholders. So also, I attended a lot of the short-term rental committee meetings, and I came in right from the start kind of a little bit argumentative, and then I started to realize, like I suggested, hey, let's start speaking while we're drafting it versus leaving it to the end. Short-term rental committee took the suggestion, started doing it. Somebody said, hey, let's do these meetings at night. Here we are, we're doing something at night. It was like really hard work, diligent work, and I think how I interpret it being involved is everybody is making best efforts to collaboratively work together and create some solutions for the community. So thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just respond? I mean, we want to get through this tonight, but we have to stay on topic. And but for the information of the speaker, there are stakeholders on the committee.
No? not as Airbnb owners though. Only two people have been landlords as documented.
No talking back and forth between talking about, sorry. So, okay, so we need to move on. We've got a lot to cover,
We do
so.
have a lot to cover. There's more zoning bylaw amendments to cover tonight,
Yep.
not in this public hearing, so I
Right.
just want to underscore that, but
I'd like to comment on this first paragraph before you get that down,
Well, come up.
please. Because it speaks to the impact on existing residences and whether or not it affects, the value of homes.
So, yeah, please identify
My name is
yourself.
Susan McWinney. I live at 42 Third Street. I'm concerned as a property owner with the vagueness of short-term rental. I don't want transients next to my home coming and going every 2 days.
Okay, so we're talking about the first paragraph.
The first paragraph.
We're not talking about the meat of the
Right,
bylaw. Just,
but a prior speaker, Mr. Chairman, brought up, she didn't understand why it was negative and how it would impact on home values. If I were bringing a young family into Westport, I'd be very concerned that there were 2-day rentals, transients near my kids, my home. I think that will definitely impact on property values and reduce some of the nice qualities we have of living in fishing and farming community. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Maybe we should tackle this paragraph.
Yeah, so let's do the next section. So,
9.8.2.1, rental permit. Let me scroll this down a little bit. No person shall operate a bed and breakfast or short-term rental dwelling without first registering with the Board of Health and obtaining a rental permit. A, the Board of Health shall determine the number of bedrooms and the number of persons such dwelling or portion of a dwelling may lawfully accommodate. B, the rental permit shall be issued subject to regulations adopted by the Board of Health at a public hearing. Move the cursor. C, the Board of Health shall, pursuant to the requirements of Section 9.8 and its regulations and fee schedule, issue a rental permit to be renewed annually. Failure of the owner to fully abide by the requirements of Section 9.8 may result in failure to grant or renew a rental permit. D, it shall be the responsibility of the property owners to ensure full compliance with the Town of Westport zoning bylaws, the Westport Board of Health short-term rental regulations, and any other applicable state and local health and safety laws or regulations. Word?
I don't have any problem with that. The issue of, the issue of, is that the Board of Health or the Building Inspector's Office can be changed later, but we're talking about an entity of the town doing this. And so, anybody in the audience have a problem with this section?
I got a question. Tim Gillespie, 137 Horseneck Road, and my family has a property at the Point on Scotch Pine Lane, a seasonal property that my grandfather built over 100 years ago. And this bylaw brings to mind, not that our situation would necessarily be impacted, but knowing the people that do have old summer houses that they rent during the high season, I'm wondering how involved the Board of Health is going to be in determining whether they have adequate septic systems. Because, you know, if they sell their house, they're going to be required to put a new system in. Some of these old summer homes are still working off old cesspools, but they get so little use, they don't really cause a major issue. But it would be a major issue for anyone that's trying to rent for a couple of weeks, maybe a month during the summer. Not an Airbnb situation, but a family trying to support an old family summer place that they would like to use themselves occasionally. And if this bylaw would trigger a review of the septic systems, I would imagine that a lot of these places are gonna be pretty seriously impacted. So I'm just curious if there's an answer to that. How far does the Board of Health review go?
I don't know yet, so Tim, I think, I would imagine, and I can't speak for the Board of Health, but they would want to know if it's a compliant system, which means it's working, that it's not in failure. I don't think it means that it's a Title V system, but I can't.
That would be a nice thing to address.
Right.
Because that'll be an ambiguous thing at town meeting that will get a lot of resistance, I imagine.
So I think, we don't want people renting out houses that have a failed system.
No, of course not.
But I think that's a question for the Board of Health, but I think that is a good question. Thank you. Yes, sir?
John Long, 2042 Main Road. Yeah, so in that, on the third sentence down where it says the Board of Health shall determine the number of bedrooms, building upon what Mr. Gillespie had said, it would be nice to know how. And I brought minutes, and I highlighted them before the meeting, where I asked that question at one of the meetings, like what will it be? And it included some a water test, and then also specifically as it relates to septics, it was said, let me find it, analysis of the septic design and the number of bedrooms in the home. And that was at the October 19th meeting. So I building upon also what Michael Sullivan had said, not the former selectman, but the other Michael Sullivan, he had said that it'd be nice to have like kind of a guide, like an owner manual for people, and I think that would be really good. But specifying, because right here where it says analysis of the septic design, that's what kind of caught me. I was like, what does that mean? Like, is it going to trigger a Title V? I understand that cesspools have to be updated by 2026. I read that on not Town One, but a Watershed Alliance website. And I understand it triggers if a house is sold. But it would be neat to have a better understanding of that before putting it forward. Thank you.
I was not on the short-term rental committee, but I would imagine that determining the number of bedrooms has some kind of metric with the septic system that's approved and on file with the Board of Health.
And
so if you have a 3-bedroom septic system, you can't have 5 bedrooms.
I completely understand that. However, it's a different part of the sentence when it was, it was like if I read it the way that is written in the minutes, it says it would involve an analysis of the septic design, full stop, and the number of bedrooms in the home. So it seems like 2 separate things. So it would be nice for clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Real quick on this section, I had recommendation to the board about removing it from the Board of Health totally and speeding up this process to get it to town meeting, because we do need a zoning bylaw, is to remove it from the Board of Health and actually move it to the building department with the access of a permit, just a permit, using a field card with what they are paying taxes on, making sure they are paying current taxes, and if they are no, and there are no restrictions from the town other than that, it's an issue of a permit. If we go through the Board of Health, it was discussed in the meetings, the water test, septics, bedrooms conforming, fire inspections, house layouts inspections, and site plans. It would take a very long time. In correction to Mr. Long, the cesspools do not have to be upgraded to 2028. So right now, I would say that if we moved it to the building department and it was a special permit for a fee, then we could move on, and then we would remove all the inspections that are like Title V, water tests and all of that. It's a permit. Then the town would have a record of who's doing it, and then it's not pushing everyone underground and having it go underground. Because the more inspections and the more loopholes, the subjects in this town and everything else that people are, millionaires do not rent out their homes. People who have a long-term goal for their families or to keep legacy homes or to care for an elderly person rent out short-term rentals or rent out their homes for need to pay their taxes and their bills. Multi-millionaires do not rent out their homes. So we're targeting 170 people in this town who are registered with the DOR. We're targeting, they are paying a 4% room rate, everybody who's on Airbnb and VBRO and all those other things, and through realtors, they are paying a 4% and the town is getting revenue. We would like to keep the revenue going in this town. We have been collecting the money. So I think that if we pass something that actually goes, that the select board can actually bring to town meeting, and it's not discriminatory, but it also doesn't push the economics underground and actually but buyers not come into this town also, or people devalue their homes and keep our tax levels up. We also have to look at the big picture. That's just my recommendation.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Section 9.8.2.2, requirements for both bed and breakfast and short-term rentals. A, no tenant or lessee of an owner shall let or sublet a bed and breakfast or short-term rental. B, the owner shall conform to any requirements of the Massachusetts Department of Public Health and Department of Public Health and Code Enforcement, adhere to all existing rules, regulations, and other federal, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and Town of Westport requirements pertaining to health and safety as typically regulated and enforced by the Building Department, Board of Health, Conservation Commission, Fire Department, Planning Board, and/or Board of Selectmen. C, the owner shall have accommodation for parking per Section 8.3. D, the applicant shall be current with all town taxes, water, and sewage charges. E, in the residential/agriculture district, a bed and breakfast and short-term rental is granted solely to A, private owner who is a resident of Westport, B, a legal resident of Westport, C, an LLC in which the majority owner is a resident of Westport, D, a trust in which a trustee is a legal resident of Westport. F, the permit shall not be transferable or assigned to any other person. G, the permit for a bed and breakfast or short-term rental does not run with the property. It shall be terminated upon the sale or transfer of the property for which the permit has been issued. And finally, H, if applicable, the owner shall obtain a certificate of registration with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Revenue, including identification of state and local applicants and taxes.
Michael, we got a comment through the comment board related to the legal resident of Westport. Do you want to read that into the record?
Which one was that?
From Mr. Tom, I think. You sent it out today.
Oh, yes. Well, before we'll read this first when we move to public comment, but does the board have any additional comments?
Yeah, I have. I thought you had reworded that because of the problem that a lot of people who are renting, who would rent, are not legal residents of Westport because they go to Florida for 6 months in a day. So
this, well,
you had worked on the rewording of that with Roger Menard, and I thought that we'd come to a different wording of that.
In sending it over to Roger Menard, I did not get him to sign off on that language. However, I can read off that proposed revision, and this pertains to that section E regarding the ownership requirements. We have received a lot of feedback on this section, and so in an attempt to meet in the middle, let's see if I can find it.
just for, I'm gonna keep speaking while you do that. The other issue, I think there has to be some mechanism if an out-of-town owner owns one or two or three or four or five of these things that has been doing this for years and years and years, that there's some mechanism to ask for a variance to this bylaw, or do they have to go to the zoning board?
So if there's so, for example, sorry, I have trouble doing things and talking at the same time, but, for example, if you were to, disagree with one of these things and you would like to have a variance, then you would apply to, for a permit with whoever the permitting agency may be and whatever the framework is. If it's the building inspector, then you get your denial, and then you would appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals. I apologize for the delay, everyone.
While he's looking for that, does anybody have a comment?
Yes, I do.
I've actually, I've got it
You got
here.
it? Okay. So,
So as an alternative to the ownership requirements, in the residential agriculture district, the number of bed and breakfast and short-term rental permits granted to any entity is limited to a maximum of one short-term rental / bed and breakfast permit total for a non-resident party to an LLC or trust, and individual non-resident owners. So essentially, folks living out of Westport. B, a maximum of 2 short-term rental / bed and breakfast permits total for residents of Westport. The allotment for Westport residents shall include permits where the individual is party to an LLC or trust. G, these letters might not align with what's in the bylaw, just for reference. G, all parties represented by an LLC or trust must be named upon submission of a short-term rental / bed and breakfast permit application. H, applicants must include the owner's place of established residency with the permit application, including the place of residency for individuals represented by an LLC or trust.
What about your state? All right.
What does the board have any comments on that? And before we move on to public comment, and then
yeah, I think that for me, this wordsmithing is more tenable to what is happening out there already than the other one, which precludes anyone from outside of town renting one of these things, no matter how long they've owned it, which is crazy.
So the idea behind this is to kind of try to achieve balance between two competing desires. So on one hand, the short-term rental committee really wanted to emphasize that short-term rentals should be for the benefit of Westport residents. But on the other hand, we received feedback that, folks said, hey, wait a minute, that kind of precludes some folks who are here seasonally. And so we'd like for them to still be incorporated in the short-term rental framework. And so this is, trying to meld those two ideas together.
Michael, at our last meeting, we talked about being able to contact someone locally if there was a problem. Is that this section or a different section?
That's a section later.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so does the board have any additional comments?
No, I think it's I'm looking at this for the first time, but it strikes me that it may be a good middle ground, because the issue of whether it's open to, or the non-residents are excluded completely, is obviously has a lot lot of very difficult issues that put certain people at disadvantage, so. But we have to find a balance between that and having it wide open.
I have some ideas.
I'd just like to read
Yep.
the comment from Thomas Towers, which was
Okay.
originally requested. So, Mr. Tao of 97 John Reed Road in Westport states, I'm writing to you and Chairman Mr. James T. White to express my concerns about the proposed bylaw regarding short-term rentals. I would like to make comments and recommendations as well. I am a non-resident homeowner of 97 John Reed Road, Westport. Our summer beach cottage is located within the state Horseneck Beach. We have rented out our cottage in the last 7 years during summers with a minimum of 1 week stay. We have strict house rules that our guests must follow. Our well-behaved guests frequent local stores and restaurants, for example, Lee's, Back Eddy, Bayside, Bittersweet, and lists a number of local businesses. Our guests love Westport and our cottage. Most of our guests of 2023 are returning customers. Some of them have been with us all these years. Some have already made reservations for 2024 as well. Well-managed summer beach rentals like ours are a win-win situation for our guests, the town of Westport, and us as well. We are surprised at the proposed draft, which intends to take away our property right of renting. I do not understand the reasons and purposes. I am also wondering what legal ground for municipalities of the Commonwealth is by voting out the property rights of one group of people at town meetings, since private property right is the foundation of our nation. Thus, I would like to recommend a modification to be a minimum by adding a sentence to section 3.0 to spare us and alike weekly rentals of summer beach properties are not defined as short-term. Thank you for looking at this matter.
All right, Cynthia Kazakowicz, 1476 B Drift Road. I've been a resident of the Commonwealth for 24 years, a non-resident taxpayer of Westport since 2010, and now a resident of Westport as of 2021. I find this section about non-resident property owners not allowing renters to be offensive. In the first instance, I think A and B are redundant. A legal resident of Westport has to effectively have to own a property to rent. So a private owner who's a resident of Westport, they're the same thing. There's no difference. To Mr. Witten's comment, this really excludes the snowbirds, right? You have a lot of people who've been basically have lived in the town all their lives and now are in Florida, and it's much more tax advantageous to be a resident of Florida rather than a resident of Westport. But they still come back to Westport in the summer because who wants to be in Florida? So you know you're excluding, you're hurting a lot of long-term residents of the town. I know the issue here with had wanted to be a resident has to do with you wanted people to have skin in the game, that a resident would be more likely, you guys talked to the committee, I talked to Roger, I talked to Jerry, more likely to take care of the property. But if you recall, Spinnaker Way, what brings us here today, was owned by a resident of Westport. So to specifically exclude non-resident taxpayers goes against the reason we're here. Then, if you're a private owner of Westport, that only allows people who are fortunate to have two homes. Because where are you gonna live? If you have to be a resident of Westport, what are you gonna rent, right? So you have to live somewhere else. And who would, I mean, it's, you have to, and then you're gonna be a resident of where else that other place is, and now you can't rent your home. So, you know, if you want to prevent, and I think we all do want to prevent, people coming in and gobbling up homes and renting them out, I understand that, and I agree, because I don't want that happening in Westport. That will change the character of Westport. I suggested to Roger to go to the committee and say, limit the number of weeks you're allowed to rent, right? So if you're going to be a resident of any other place but Westport, you've got to spend 6 months and a day there, right? So that means you can only rent in Westport as a non-resident property owner for 6 months minus a day. That means you have skin in the game. You're planning to come back in here, back to town, or not, or just leave it empty. I mean, that will, you know, suffice some of the long-term, the family houses that people are renting just to pay the taxes to, so they can eventually retire here, right? I mean, like, I didn't make my residency in Westport just because I knew I was gonna retire here. So I left my primary residence to be my residence I was gonna sell, so I was able to get a tax advantage. I mean, I don't think anybody would have thought I wasn't a resident 5 years ago. Yeah, everybody I saw at the dump, everybody I saw at the post office, they didn't know I was a non-resident property tax over. I was a member of the community. And I think to have, as to the previous comment and to the comment that was written, to exclude a resident taxpayer and a non-resident taxpayer without any rational basis, which you have no rational basis, because the whole reason we're here is because a resident of Westport bought a house and didn't care about it, right? It violates the equal protection law. And we're gonna end up in more problems. You know, legal residency is not just, you know, I just decide I want to be a Westport resident, so I'm going to be a Westport resident because I own a house here. There's legal principles and repercussions of where you claim your residency. In Florida, they're very strict. They actually monitor your cell phones and where your cars are registered to make sure you're living there for 6 months and a day to get the benefit of being a Florida resident and not paying state taxes. I just want, and I don't want to keep reiterating everybody else's, what everybody else has said, but I think the history of Westport is before Airbnb, with short-term rentals for family homes, so family homes that were passed on with ill-written wills and trusts, that left the children with no recourse of how to pay for this house. They want to keep, they want to pass it down to their children, other than renting it for a portion of the time in which of the summer, so they can capture the taxes. Back to the LLC language here, I think we also have a problem because an LLC, you know, two people could buy a house and put it in LLC for reasons, then it's 50-50. There is no majority stakeholder. It can be passed down to 4 children, whereas 25%. There is no majority. A majority is 51%. And you're saying by has to be having a majority owner, you're destroying, you know, so now one of the siblings who have a house has to decide that they want to have 51%, and you know how much money a family does. And your trust language is just absolutely wrong, because basically a trustee is someone who is a fiduciary who takes care of the property. It's not, they have no interest in the property other than they're the owner for the benefit of a beneficiary. So this language only applies to nominee trusts. It doesn't apply to a trust that my trust right now is a revocable trust, which will become irrevocable when I pass away, that my trustee is a bank. So my bank, so somebody, some bank can actually now, if they're a resident of Westport, rent my house. No, it's the beneficiaries. So I think I would urge you to go to your town attorney that D is just doesn't make legal sense. And that's all I got.
Thank you.
That's a lot.
Walter Barnes, I'm a resident of Division Road, and I'm speaking as a principal property owner of property located on Brayton Point Road. I was asked by my eldest son, who is a land expert and couldn't be here tonight. He's not a resident of Westport, but he works on Tuesday night. But anyway, these properties have been in the family for many years, 30 plus, and we do rely on rental money, both long-term and short rental. The taxes are exceedingly high, 2.5 times what I pay on Division Road. There's a lodging tax that we pay, and I agree. I personally would like to know how the lodging tax portion that goes to the town is utilized. Can anyone answer that?
It goes in the general fund.
Okay, well, is there any way that it could be allocated as far as supervising health and other concerns regarding rental properties. But getting back to this, my son asked me this question. You know, I'm alive today, I live in Westport, so I can apply, I can qualify for everything under E, but I'm not living forever, and maybe I'm gonna be a snowbird. So he asked, you know, if E is put into effect, what is this gonna do to the family legacy for people that don't live in Westport, but have been affiliated with the property for more than 30 years and rely on some funds from renting the property in order to preserve the property and retain it. So for me, E is unacceptable. And I ask you to consider, if you, when you pass and you have relatives that don't live in town but have been affiliated with the property for years and want to retain the property, why they depend on some rental monies, and they're in total agreement with the community. I mean, I've never gotten any complaints from neighbors or the town for what I'm doing. So I must be doing something right, and I've actually improved the property to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I ask you to put this into your considerations, and that this E has to be changed. Thank you.
Okay, I guess we're ready to start the next one, no?
My name is Wendy Dorsey, and I live at 56 Hillcrest Acres. I came with 2 comments on the document, excuse me. I have a real concern about the requirement for parking. So I think what the language says is that there be 1 parking place per bedroom. And in a 4-bedroom house, my expectation would be that many of the renters would be families with kids. And to require that the property owner make 4 legal parking spaces for the entire year in order to accommodate renters. What concerns me is the impact on the landscape, the increase in impermeable surfaces, leading to water runoff into our river and watershed and pollution and so on. So I'd like to suggest that the ordinance writers reconsider that requirement. And I agree with all the comments. The other thing I was concerned about was the limitation to who would be eligible for a permit, and I thought there were some good comments and suggestions. What I didn't realize was the challenge the town has in administering this, and as I was listening to you, Jim, this is a zoning issue. And separately, it's a health inspection issue, but I was wondering whether the town could change the zoning ordinance and simply make short-term rentals legal as an as-of-right ability in the zoning ordinance. I mean, you don't register and pay a fee and get paperwork and bureaucracy to have a house or to have a business or a farm or whatever. And so anyway, I just wondered whether you could maybe immediately solve the problem by making short-term rentals legal in the zoning code and then deal with the permitting at a separate time. Thank you.
Okay, I'm trying not to reply to everybody, but one of the reasons that we're here is our inability to control short-term rentals when they are a nuisance. And so I think that that's part of the reason for this bylaw. You've already spoken, so we're gonna go to the next person.
Can I come back after her?
We need to get through this tonight, unless you
I
have
just
something
have a
else.
short question.
I'll be quick. I have, to that response, Jim, Nicole Plant, how many are a nuisance other than the one that has been spoken to? Has the police department said that short-term rentals are a problem in Westport?
It isn't up to the police, it's up to the people who live nearby, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if they are a problem for the police, that's a bigger issue.
But has the police department had a comment on this? I'm asking as a general to the planning board and to the short-term committee rental. Has the police department had a problem with short-term rentals in the history of this town, which we all know we double our population in the summer? Do we have a problem with the police department? I'm asking a legit question. That's what this says, nuisance. Like you just brought up the word nuisance. Is that a problem?
I don't know.
And that's, so why are we talking?
I know that they have been called to the place on Braden Point Road.
One bad egg, two bad eggs. We've got two. 2 out of 170 that are registered.
I don't know if that's...
You're giving comments, you're not grilling us. Go sit down, will you?
Well, my question is parking. Parking, as I asked, was parking should be removed. Parking, is it going to put a stigma on a homeowner to require? So they're allowed to park on the shoulder of a street. They're allowed to park, so your home, when it's built, you don't have to have ample parking. So you can have a 4-bedroom house with 8 cars, 10 cars. You can have family over. How is the short-term rental and having a parking rule regulation that the poor police department is going to keep calling, so the family comes in for the weekend that actually owns the home, has a party for the weekend? It's not short-term renters, but they're parking on the shoulder, they're there, they're using their home. It's not that. How will you know who's the short-term rental and the homeowner enjoying their home? So now you're requiring parking. So there's overflow, but they're going to call and they're going to say there's an overflow at the short-term rental. How do you know what weeks? This is where we're micromanaging something that is not needing to be micromanaged. Also, so I think parking should be totally removed from the bylaw. Also E needs to be totally removed from the bylaw. We are going after people, again, we talked about inheritance, but we have people, we do not have nursing homes, assisted living, or rehab facilities that for our elderly people who need the short-term rentals. They are not residents sometimes when they are removed from long-term care. That is also what is also happening in this town. It is not just the south end of Westport that does short-term rentals. We have a north end situation where people also do short-term rentals because they need to keep the home occupied. They don't want the nursing home to take it. They're having rental income. There's not a lot of hotels in the area. We need to keep these people in mind also, because the family, the person who's now in charge of that person who's in long-term care is not a resident. There's many scenarios why people are renting out their homes, but the resident part is not always what you think it is. Also, a homestead is only for your home that you live in. So many people put their homes into LLCs because it's another level of protection other than an insurance policy. So that's why people use LLCs. It is, and again, that's also what she talked about. But again, if you don't have a homestead to protect your home and for liability, they also do that. So they're not hiding anything. They're not a business. They're just protecting themselves because it's their second home, a family home, or they're eventually going to move here. So those are things that to consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just had a short question. Has anyone on the board or the town planners, have they conferred with adjacent towns as far as what their rental policies are in terms of E?
I think that we've reviewed dozens of bylaws from neighboring towns and all over the place.
So what do they do in terms of E, as far as an owner being a town resident?
I think we have a lot of comments about E. So I think that from myself as well. So I don't think E will survive as it's written. So
thank you.
Okay, next section, please.
I'm going to read through 9.8.3 and 9.8.3.1. Bed and breakfast. A bed and breakfast consisting of renting rooms on a daily or weekly basis and providing breakfast meals to guests renting such rooms are permitted in accordance with section 5.1, table of use regulations, and the following requirements. A, the only meal to be provided guests shall be breakfast, and it shall be served to guests taking lodging at the facility and shall be included in the guest room rate. B, guest rooms shall not include individual kitchen facilities and shall have at least one toilet, one bath/shower, and one wash basin, separate from those required for the single-family residence portion of the dwelling. C, not more than 45% of the entire habitable living space shall be allocated for bed and breakfast establishment purposes. D, the one non-illuminated sign may be erected on the property not to exceed 8 square feet in size, with no single dimension exceeding 4 feet. And that's it. That is, this section, just for the record, is really just, it's not modified from what is already in the zoning law.
Okay. Let's go to the next one.
9.8.4, short-term rental. A short-term rental is permitted as an accessory use in accordance with section 5.1, table of use regulations, and the following requirements. A, the following residential housing units may not be used as short-term rentals. Subsection A, residential premises designated as affordable or otherwise income restricted, which are subject to affordability covenants and or are otherwise subject to housing or rental assistance under local, state, or federal programs or law. Subsection B, dwellings subject to any requirement of local, state, or federal law that prohibits the leasing or subleasing of the unit or use the unit as a short-term rental. B, commercial meetings and for-profit events or venues or uses are not permitted in short-term rentals. C, no signs are allowed identifying the property as available for short-term rental. D, short-term rentals shall be, should say used for a minimum of 2 nights. E, the owner shall post the following information for all short-term renters. A, subsection A, an emergency exit diagram and all bedrooms used for rental. Subsection B, contact information for locally available representative designated to respond to all emergencies and problems that arise during the rental period, whether from renters, neighbors, or municipal authorities. And I actually have 2 emails to read in reference to section E, subsection B, but I'll leave the floor open to the board.
So, are they short?
Not quite.
No. Well, just give me a synopsis. What don't they like? Or what are they suggesting?
So the one email, which is from Joseph Ingoldsby of 471 Old County Road, is essentially saying that a critical thing in short-term rentals is just making sure that there is some sort of supervision of the property. So to make sure that, that the rental is not being overcrowded, that there are too many cars being parked on lawns or something like that. So to have someone local to ensure that there's a responsible party that has a little bit of oversight. And he would also...
But he also
encourage-
talks about how, as a neighbor, he is adversely impacted by the people who rent.
Sure,
So in terms of some of the discussion that goes on about how there is no adverse impact, he goes on to great length about how, as a neighbor, he is adversely impacted.
Right, and so he is directly adjacent to a short-term rental. So these comments are coming from his lived experience. And then he also goes on to note that to recommend that there's fencing in between short-term rentals and adjacent residential properties. And Virginia Buchanan. I do not have her address, although she has been present at, you have her address?
We've heard from her. She lives in Attleboro,
Right.
and she has 5 properties here.
And her concerns are more around her property being what is claimed to be a legal non-conforming use. So it doesn't actually have to do with this piece here. But.
Just one comment for the board to consider when reflecting those comments. You don't get to pick your neighbors. So yes, your short-term rental might only be for 2 weeks, make the royal a-hole. But you could have an owner right next to you who works 365 days a year, even worse. I think we all have had that, right? We've all had a neighbor we don't like. You know, I'd rather at least they're short-term, and I have a short-term rental next to me, and we had, you know, actually the owner wouldn't let them come back because he actually apologized because they brought out 2 30-gallon things of booze bottles after the weekend, of the girls' weekend, and it was a little loud, it was a little annoying, but I knew they were gonna leave, and I knew they were never coming back. So I think as long as you have open communication with your neighbors that you had a bad rental, and please don't rent to them again, I don't think there'll be a problem. You don't need any fences.
One last comment.
Fences make good neighbors.
Long-term rentals and winter rentals will also tax the system. So we force short-term rentals down as a community and push it this way. They'll go to long-term rentals, which will tax the system of Westport as a long-term as a whole. It will put kids in the school system, it will put people in the council of aging, and it will tax the community more because they'll go to the long-term rentals. It will have a longer problem long-term. Short-term rentals, yes, are an inconvenience to some neighbors, but most of the neighbors and the people who rent them are aware of their bad tenants. They put them on a list. Most people talk. Most people know that they're not. That we have like a nice little list. Most of the community to not let them come back. So again, be careful of how this gets worded because then again we end up with long-term, and then those people are in the community. We end up doing long-term rentals, and it taxes the rest of the system in Westport. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, moving on to violation provisions, section 9.8.4. Violations of this bylaw will be subject to provisions of MGL Chapter 40, Section 21D regarding non-criminal disposition as adopted by the town of Westport. Any owner who fails to comply with any provision of these regulations shall be subject to the actions identified in Section 2.1 for each offense, where each day of non-compliance is considered a separate offense. Jim, for the record, I also circulated with you and Roger, and we weren't able to reconcile my proposed revisions to make it into this draft. But what I had proposed to you and Roger was, in addition to that provision, to add a section B, which would read short-term rentals and bed and breakfast that are subject to 3 or more findings as issued by the inspector of buildings of violations of this section within a 6-month period, or 3 or more violations of any municipal ordinance or state law or code relating to excessive noise, improper disposal of trash, disorderly conduct, or other similar conduct within a 6-month period shall be ineligible for short-term rental and bed and breakfast use for a 6-month period immediately following the 3rd violation.
So do you think that's legal?
That is legal. That is, the city of Salem has that regulation in place now.
Okay.
Who's for the
Is that the end?
That's
You got more?
this. So the next section of the bylaws. Changes to section 8.3, as was mentioned, there were some concerns about the parking here, but that change, as in this draft of the bylaw, would be to add a short-term rental has a minimum of 1 space per guest room in a location normal for residential use and on the premises. Then in our use table, which I apologize, the section number is not up there. The section is 5.1. And that would add bed and breakfast and short-term rentals as allowed uses in the residential and agricultural district, business district, and unrestricted district. And lastly, section 3.0, which is the Town of Westport's definition section, or excuse me, the bylaws definition section. Short-term rental. A short-term rental is a dwelling that is not a hotel, motel, lodging house, or bed and breakfast where at least one room or unit is rented out through the use of advanced reservations not to exceed 31 consecutive days. A short-term rental includes an apartment, house, cottage, and condominium. It does not include property that is rented out through tenancies or at-will or month-to-month leases. It also does not include timeshare property or bed and breakfast, and refers to the definition of bed and breakfast.
Okay. So,
Don't you want to put in the minimum, the 2-night minimum in that? In that definition?
It could be. I'd have to think about it.
But it's in our proposed section 9.8.41.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it were in the definition, it would beg the question of, are there a different category of short-term rentals that are just one day, as opposed to what this bylaw is saying? The short-term rental is restricted, it's recognizing that there may be short-term rentals that are just one day, but in this bylaw, it's saying, no, that's restricted, we're gonna restrict it to 2 days.
okay.
Mr. Chair, I don't know how you want to proceed, but I have a suggestion, which is that we wanted to move to another meeting where the short-term rental committee could post and have a joint meeting with us. So if we want to have a second meeting, then that would give Michael an opportunity to take some of our comments. And the comments that we've heard tonight, and incorporate them in an additional draft, which I'm sure he's just dying to do. I don't know what number draft this is right now. But then we could look at that at that meeting, whenever that is. And I would make 3 comments for consideration, having listened to people tonight. The first is having to do with the comments made about the statement of purpose. And I think back to about our first meeting, when one of the motivations was not necessarily whatever that house was called, House of Horrors or whatever, but somebody said, we don't want to be like the Cape. We don't want to be overrun. And I think if we phrase the statement of purpose as what we are now is and what we have been for 100 years is actually really nice. You know, it's really good. And phrase that, it's really good. But we are aware of places like the Cape, and we don't want to become that. And we have the potential to become that. And the purpose of the bylaw is to protect what we have, because it's really good. And it's worked for a long time. But there are forces that have taken hold in places like the Cape where you get overrun. And we don't want that to happen here. And this bylaw is an attempt to protect what we have, which is really good, and to protect us against the forces that have destroyed places like the Cape, which used to be good, but aren't now. And what's happened on the Cape is it has destroyed the housing market. You can't get housing anymore on the Cape. So I think if we phrased it that way, that what we have now is really good, so that it's not impugning an industry that we have. It's saying, no, what we have is great. This is designed to avoid what has taken over in some other places. I wouldn't name the Cape, we don't have to be specific about that, but I think that's a subtle change of phrasing. What we have now is good. This bylaw is designed to avoid what has happened in some other places. That's one comment I would make. Secondly, I think you're on the right track on the language on absentee owners. And I think it can really be simplified. I think the comments you made about trusts and LLCs and stuff like that, we can really make that a lot simpler.
Limit the number of days they can rent, and they automatically have your part.
So I think that can be made much shorter and simpler. And the third one is I agree with Wendy's comments on parking and the comments made by, when people have family over, you have temporary situations where there's more cars than there are parking. So I don't know whether you want to have a restriction that says one parking for 2 bedrooms or something like that, but I think that may be, you look at zoning in Boston and other places where you're getting high rises built with 0 parking, right? Because you want to discourage people from using cars, and I think there's justification to reduce that parking requirement to preserve permeable surfaces. Those are my 3 comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think that what we should be considering is having the planning group do some wordsmith, send it to the short-term rental committee and to the planning board, and schedule a meeting of both. It would be a public meeting. And then see if we can hammer out some wording before that meeting so that we can discuss the new wording. And then at that time, have the ability to take the comments from that meeting and change any wording that needs changing, and then send it to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, we can have a work session next week if need be, or probably need time to sit down and synthesize things that were discussed tonight. But we can have a work session next week, and we can continue this hearing to the subsequent planning board meeting. That'd probably be the best approach, I think,
Okay.
and to do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the next meeting?
2 weeks from today. Yep, 23rd.
So we could have a work session with the short-term committee a week from today?
Yeah, so.
Now, we have 2 public hearings already scheduled on the 23rd, though.
The working session, I just need to check to see if this room is available next week on Tuesday.
This room? It's probably not. Well, at 4 o'clock it would be.
Right, or we can do it in the select board's meeting room, I don't want to commit
We
to.
actually have probably 3 on the 23rd because of 435 Old Harbor Road. So we have 3.
It's going to be a full.
That'll be
won't get
short.
out till the 24th.
No, I think that'll be simple. So,
Well, yeah, if I could just suggest, before we fix a date for the work session, could we maybe circulate a poll of the people who will be invited? Because there's some people, like the chair of the short-term rental is not here tonight.
right.
And I just want to make sure we can include those people.
We can do it outside of this meeting, and just so you all know, we'll post it on our website too. Public's welcome to attend the work session as well.
So right now, TBD.
We'll notice it for the short-term rental committee as well.
Okay. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Last comment.
Jerry Mullen, Cherry and Web Lane. I came for a reason tonight. And the reason was my history in Westport goes back before the state took the beach by eminent domain. And my point is this. We as a town got left with no beach because of poor planning, I'm going to say. Or it was rushed through, and we don't want to do that same thing here. And so my recommendation is strongly, we are not ready with this to put it in front of the people at a town meeting.
Thank you for the comment. Okay, so thank you all for that. So how are we going to let people know that there's a meeting? The other people that are not on the short-term committee? Don't we need to?
It'll be.
Wait, before everybody leaves.
It'll be posted on our website, on the planning board's website.
Okay. Are we continuing the public hearing, or are we going to have another?
I recommend that we continue the public hearing, and I think we should continue it to the next meeting.
So we got already 2 or 3 things on that January 23rd.
For February?
No, that's the, February 6th, we only have 1 public hearing, March out. Oh, continue February 6th.
Want a motion to continue the public hearing to February 6th at 6:30.
And they allow the dogs too.
Okay.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. In the back of the room, we're continuing the meeting. Next is the 6:45 public hearing for 435 Old Harbor Road, which was file number 23-037 SPA, continued from November 28th, 2023. Request by the applicant to consider converting the existing residence into an adolescent education and housing facility. The applicant has requested a continuance.
You want a motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I move we continue the public hearing of 435 Old Harbor Road to January 23rd at 6:30.
6:45.
6:45.
Second. All those in favor?
Hey, oh, wait a minute. Would it be better to continue this one to February 6th and the short-term rental to
Yeah, it'd give us more time. We could do that, so we'd have to,
you want to switch these?
No, I think going to the February one gives us a little bit.
Okay, all right. So I keep the motion the same, to continue 435 Old Harbor Road to January 23rd at 6:45, is that what you said, 6:45?
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Next is the 7 PM public hearing from
Actually,
Westport.
I'm sorry, can I have a motion for that for 6:30? Because
6:30.
Yeah, 6:30.
Didn't we do that?
No, we have a 6:4, we have, so on, for January 23rd, we have Quarry Ridge at 6:15 and Salty Breeze at 6:45. So we should put Old Harbor at 6:30.
Okay.
Okay,
I thought that's what the motion was.
I thought so too.
Was, that's what I said to begin with. Then you said change it to 6:45. I'm trying to do what you tell me to do, Amy. You're making it very difficult. 6:30.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So now we have three motions.
Yeah, we'll approve them all. And she'll write the minutes however she wants to write them.
Right. Okay, next up is the 7 PM public hearing for Westport Lakes ILF, file number 23-036 SP-ILF. Application withdrawal, close and release the consultant review balance of $5,000 plus interest, and close the public hearing.
So there are three motions here. You want them?
You can do it all together.
All right, I'll move. The first one is move to grant the applicant's request to permit the withdrawal without prejudice for Westport Lakes application for site plan approval, low impact development, and a special permit assisted independent living facility. The second motion is to release the inspection funds of $5,000 plus interest. And the third is a motion to close the public hearing for Westport Lakes.
I second all three of those motions.
All in favor?
Aye.
We had the planner's report, we had the correspondence, we had the reimbursement.
That's actually a good thing.
And we have the minutes from December 12th.
Mr. Chairman, I did not see anything requiring correction unless somebody else did. And if not, I'd vote to accept the minutes of December 12th.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Long, short-term planning, Westport Gateway District created a new zoning district to replace the business district. The district would provide greater flexibility for land uses, including mixed uses. Do you want to go through that? Or you want to do this at the,
I'd like to,
okay,
because,
it's coming up.
yeah, we need to get this sent over to the select board to then get sent back to you all, and then we need about a month to notice the public hearing.
Okay.
Trying to be quick. So the Westport Gateway District is going to essentially replace the business district between Fall River and Route 88. We're trying to develop a zoning district that would allow for greater flexibility of land uses. No, we have that section in the table of uses that's really restrictive. So we want to have this district provide more flexibility for new development, as well as allow mixing of uses with residential, and to give some flexibility with dimensional standards. There'd also be some limited architectural standards incorporated with that. Do you want me to just read all of this, or I guess I can read all of it?
Yep.
So the section 5.4, the Westport Gateway District, the adaptive mixed use, excuse me, this should be the Westport Gateway District, is intended to address determination and recognition that Westport's Route 6 corridor area requires zoning that provides a regulatory pathway reflective of the town's vision and infrastructure, mindful of compatibility with surrounding uses. As many of these properties preceded the adoption, zoning additions, property improvements, and redevelopment have been presented with regulatory anomalies that do not address the characteristics of contemporary uses envisioned for the area. The Westport Gateway Overlay District is intended to address the unique permitting challenges of current zoning provisions and offers an alternative permitting pathway while protecting the public health, safety, convenience, and welfare, consistent with section 1.1, purpose of this bylaw. The purpose of this bylaw is to create a district that promotes flexible and creative development and redevelopment of the Route 6 corridor properties while preserving the character of the property, nearby residential and commercial neighborhoods. To offer a regulatory pathway that promotes creative use or reuse of the properties, whenever possible, to promote a sense of place and pedestrian experience, to promote diversified economic development opportunities, cultural, recreational, open space, and other uses appropriate for the property and compatible with its surroundings. The Westport Gateway District is hereby established with the boundaries which are shown on the Town of Westport zoning map. Those boundaries would be what's outlined in blue up here. And just to give credit where credit's due, this was drafted by our consultant, Rutzberg at ESC Group.
Could I make a comment? If I sent you a bunch of periods, would you use them on the first paragraph? It made shorter sentences.
Yeah.
Okay. 3 or 4 periods. Have the consultant stop talking.
Well,
consultant.
the consultant charges by the length of the sentence.
Tell them to be more like an engineer and just make little statements. Keep
Active verbs, things like that, that are just totally foreign to consultants.
So this district is going to be governed largely by special permitting. And so the planning board shall serve as the special permit granting authority pursuant to this section. The planning board may waive the submittal of technical information or documents otherwise required hereunder where the applicant demonstrates that due to simplicity of the proposal, such information is not necessary for or applicable to the planning board's decision pursuant to this section. An application for a special permit shall be governed by the planning board's regulations in section 2.6. In addition, the applicant shall submit information pertaining to any organization which the applicant proposes to form where the development is to be a condominium development, including forms and plans to be used to organize and manage the same for approval as to form by the town solicitor, and B, copies of all proposed covenants, easements, and other restrictions which the applicant proposes to grant to the town, Conservation Commission, utility companies, any condominium organization and owners thereof, including plans of land to which they are intended to apply for approval as to form by the town solicitor. So this language needs to be changed a little bit.
But we can change that after the public hearing.
Right, yeah. And I'll tighten this up before we go to a public hearing. Permitted uses in the Westport Gateway District, general requirements. So this will be a table of uses essentially. It's just hard to format in a PowerPoint, and I'll tighten it up for a public hearing too. But on the next screen, Y will be allowed as of right, and SPPB will be a use allowed by special permit. All uses may be subject to site plan review by the planning board as provided in section 8.7. interpretation where a use might be classified under more than one of the following categories. The more specific category shall determine permissibility. If equally specific, the more restrictive category shall govern. A use not classifiable under any listed category may be allowed only by special permit from the Board of Appeals upon the board's determination that the use is similar and its impacts on the neighborhood, the environs, and the town to a use which is permitted or allowed by special permit in compliance with the provisions of section 2.6 and 5.4.5. This is essentially what is going to allow the town to have a flexible approach to uses that are proposed in that area to evaluate them for their suitability. So here are the uses that will be permitted in this district. Residential uses, open space residential development, inclusionary housing, assisted living and independent living facilities, and convalescent/nursing home facilities.
What is open space residential development?
Open space residential development is an alternative to the subdivisions where you will essentially concentrate your development area in smaller lot sizes than would typically be granted.
So you maximize open space?
So you maximize open space.
Yeah, okay.
And just to note, inclusionary housing, I mean, the town has an inclusionary housing bylaw, so this would ostensibly include any sort of development over 10 dwelling units. Commercial uses, retail, less than 5,000 gross square feet floor area. Retail, greater than 5,000 gross square feet floor area would be special permit. Financial institutions, professional, medical, and corporate office, special permit. Medical outpatient clinic, special permit. Food service establishment and personal service establishments, both special permit. Bakery, retail, permitted. Lodging and hospitality, special permit. Short-term rental / bed and breakfast allowed. Auto sales and services, special permit. Theater entertainment venue, special permit. Indoor amusement, special permit. Child and adult daycare facilities allowed. Funeral home allowed. For-profit education uses, special permit.
And multifamily housing is not allowed in this Gateway District?
So multifamily would be allowed if you're over 10 housing units. If you're under 10 housing units, as this is written, it would not be permitted.
So if someone wanted to come in and do a 120-unit, 4-story apartment building, they can do it here?
That would be allowed. That is, it's the case in the business district too. I mean, that would be my reading of the inclusionary housing bylaw, is that it's permitted in the underlying business district as well, and it is treated as a use in the table of uses. And so an inclusionary housing development is one that is over 10 housing units and requires a 10% affordability covenant. So I would say that yes, it's multifamily beyond 10 units is approved.
So is there a density to that?
There's a density in this bylaw that would be addressed.
Excuse me. I'm just curious, is this a partial attempt to try to get housing of a concept like Westport Lakes?
No.
No, so
Not for
it's,
this purpose? Okay. So, the concept like Westport Lakes, would it fall under any of those? Would it be the one that Mr. Bullitt asked about?
Open space.
yes, it would. So it would fit under, actually Westport Lakes, as it was proposed, as they had claimed, was that it was an assisted living or independent living facility. So that would be allowed use by special permit.
Yeah, but not as assisted or independent, right? I'm not clear. How does that differ from the question that was asked about more dense
So
open space?
The open space residential bylaw exists, so it's part of the zoning bylaw. what they're saying is that that use is allowed in this district. In the second or third, the first bit there.
Right, by special permit, yeah.
Right, by special permit, just like it is by special permit in the residential zone.
I find it curious that you have these classified areas and then a paragraph that says anything that's not classifiable goes to the zoning board, and it's like the adult entertainment, you know. Let's put that to the zoning board because we don't want to deal with that.
So it's an effort, you know, for instance, in our table of use, we have candy making.
Yeah.
So what's like candy making? Maybe cupcake making. So it's not allowed, but they could say, well, it's the same impact on the neighborhood as candy making. They go to you and they'd say, and you'd say, okay.
But I'm suggesting, why can't you say okay?
I think.
Oh, I see.
I think the rationale behind it, you know, I didn't draft these, but I will take a stab at getting into the mind of our consultant. So I would say that he would find that it would be a more appropriate pathway when we're talking about like uses, that the zoning board is the authority of zoning. And so when we're determining similar uses that might be permitted, it should go through the BZA.
You use the word like uses, not nuisance, right? Right. Point. By the way, I've never heard in this town for us to talk about the legal help as being a town solicitor. We usually use town council.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's gonna get changed. That's because it's
Yeah, we'll have to clean some of the language up a bit.
he likes to use the big words.
Yeah.
And we pay him, so.
Thank you.
All right, so manufacturing uses, artisanal manufacturing, wholesale bakery, butcher, light manufacturing, research and development, R&D laboratories and facilities, biomanufacturing facilities, all special permit, exempt and public uses, agriculture, religious and nonprofit education, accessory uses, raised solar panels and accessory battery storage and parking areas, electric vehicle charging stations, all allowed uses. And mixes of uses would also be permitted, so any combination of the permissible uses provided the aggregation of the mixed uses complies with the provisions of this section, and it would be permitted by special permit. The standards for this section: in order to be eligible for consideration for a special permit, the proposed development shall meet all the following standards. A, roadways, the principal roadways within the site shall be adequate for the intended use and vehicular traffic and shall be maintained by an association of tenants, unit owners, or by the applicant. Parking, the applicant shall provide adequate parking to serve all anticipated uses on the property, with information detailing the method of computation of parking spaces. The minimum number of parking spaces shall be computed using the requirements of section 8.3 or other applicable provisions acceptable to the planning board. No parking shall be placed within the minimum front yard setback. The required parking shall consider shared parking by uses with offset peak hours. Loading areas shall be required by the planning board where deemed necessary for the efficient operation of the Westport Gateway, or of the WGP. I'm not quite sure what the acronym stands for. Loading shall be located to the side or rear of the building unless otherwise determined by the planning board. D, utilities, all electric, gas, telephone, and water distribution lines shall be placed on the ground, except upon demonstration of exceptional circumstances. Facilities shall be served by the municipal water and sewer system or must demonstrate adequate provision of on-site water sewer where municipal services are available. The expansion of existing buildings. Existing buildings within I think so. WGP is supposed to be the Westport Gateway District, may be expanded and in accordance with the following requirements. Such expansion shall be permitted to the extent reasonably necessary as determined by the planning board to accommodate the proposed WGP. Within the F, new buildings. Within the Westport Gateway District, new buildings may be constructed in accordance with the following requirements. A, the type, architectural style, and uses within such new buildings shall be subject to planning board approval. B, new buildings shall be permitted to the extent reasonably necessary to accommodate the proposed use. And C, buildings shall comply with the architectural standards in 6, 7, 8. G, wastewater disposal. The maximum build-out shall be established by the planning board after reviewing the following criteria: existing structures, proposed method and efficacy of wastewater disposal, availability of public water, parking availability, and proximity to public transit, trip generation and traffic safety, character of the proposed WGP and its relation to the surrounding neighborhoods, character of the existing buildings and potential for reuse thereof. Planning board may ensure that diversification of dwelling units within a WGP by establishing the number of dwelling units with 1, 2, or 3 bedrooms. Additional standards, buffer area. There shall be a buffer area of sufficient distance to be determined by the planning board adjacent to residential/agricultural uses abutting the property. The purpose of this buffer area shall be to eliminate or mitigate negative impacts on existing abutters. The buffer area shall consist of existing natural vegetation and/or new plantings or combinations of vegetation and urban burns, and/or sound barriers which shall form a year-round dense screen that reach at least 6 feet in height within 3 years of issuance of the first building permit. Noise levels emanating from air conditioning equipment, fans, ventilator areas, machinery, or normal operations and other noise causing operations on the premises, including persons, shall not exceed the thresholds described in Article XL, Noise Pollution Control in the Town of Westport Town Bylaws and Massachusetts DEP noise regulation. Lighting, exterior lighting, including but not limited to lighting for parking lots, recreational areas, walks, drives, and outside building walls, shall be designed and installed in accordance with dark sky requirements and maintained to direct light away from abutting property and abutting ways. Exterior standalone lighting fixtures shall have a maximum height of 25 feet above ground unless a waiver is granted by the planning board. Exterior lighting fixtures located on a building shall also not exceed a maximum of 25 feet. Intensity requirements. Minimum lot size, 40,000 square feet of contiguous upland area of 25,000 feet or greater. Minimum frontage, 100 feet. Minimum lot width, 75 feet to the front line of the structure. Front yard setback, 20 feet minimum. Side yard setback, 10 feet. Rear yard setback, 6 feet. However, the setback is increased to 10 feet if it abuts a residential agricultural district. Maximum floor to area ratio 0.4. Maximum lot coverage 65%. Maximum building height 3 stories not to exceed 45 feet.
I think some of that math doesn't work.
With the floor to
If you allow 65% lot coverage and 3 stories, I think it probably should be more than 3 stories. You will get none of that.
Mm-hmm.
If your FAR ratio is a fraction, the FAR ratio is going to be some number bigger than 1, or else you won't get 3-story buildings.
Why is there a front yard setback?
I mean, you can have the buildings up basically right on the street. It's going to have a pretty stark visual impact in Westport where there's no structures close to the road. And so to have a setback of 20 feet is to, have some of that massing.
I mean, if you look at Main Road, some commercial buildings are on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Some designers would tell you that streets are like public living rooms, and buildings are the walls of the living rooms. And if the buildings are right on the street, then the streets can become beautiful. Look at any European city. There isn't really a need for a front setback, but it's pretty hard to turn Route 6 into a beautiful street. I mean, it just isn't.
It is. Well, I think we had a discussion during the meeting with him of making a 20-foot maximum setback, not a minimum setback. For that specific reason, so.
I mean, what about the sidewalks?
Yeah.
Treat, maybe some
Sidewalks
sidewalks.
is a much more important
Street
consideration
trees,
than
stuff like that.
a front setback.
One thing you might want to look at what Dartmouth did over the years, they had a plan of Donald Perry, and he did a lot of good things with trees, landscaping. That we seem to, one of the things like when Coastal Healing came up, they were promising us this landscaping, and it was going to be, now we got a big white elephant over there.
Yeah.
I think we got to try to.
So there's a big section here which he hasn't read yet on land.
Very big section on landscaping.
Good.
But that might
Thank you.
address some of that, yeah, that's our segue there. Jim, I will check with Russ on which.
So, and you're gonna be able to whittle this down to a 3-minute presentation at town meeting? Because we're gonna lose everybody if we go through all this.
Really fast.
Well, have it at the end of
Yeah,
town
we-
meeting and you just say, Gateway
There it is.
District passed.
Right, you absolutely don't read these things
No,
at
no,
town,
okay.
town meeting. You cannot do that.
I mean,
It's a snapshot. This is what it does, this is what it allows.
Right.
This
we
is
should try
benefits.
getting some of this, like, get the public engagement on this, like with the sewer and stuff like that, so that when we go to town meeting, they already know about this. Let's spread the word a little bit more.
Yeah, it was so we did have a public meeting about this a couple months ago.
Yeah, we got some comments. Well, why do you want to do this to the north end? What do you want this to be? We like it the way it is.
Yep.
Why can't we have a Home Depot?
And we don't want Dartmouth, but where do you shop?
Well, I think though, because of that, was some of those other districts, like I said, I think we really gotta follow that Serpent guideline that we had going. And like what we're doing, this Gateway District
Yep,
separate.
exactly.
I think this is kind of fixing a little bit of that public meeting. That was a disaster. So, but we got this big one coming up for the sewer infrastructure.
And you were a
We
big
hope
help.
to fix it. Well, I had my friends there.
So, okay, continue. We don't want to be here forever.
So the landscaping, all landscaping shall be consistent with section 8.7, site plan review. The landscape shall be preserved in its natural state as far as practicable by minimizing tree and soil removal. Any grade changes shall be in keeping with the general appearance of the neighboring developed areas. Individual building sites shall be designed to maintain existing topography and cover. Topography, tree cover, and natural drainage ways shall be treated as fixed determinants of road and lot configuration rather than as malleable elements that can be changed to follow a preferred development scheme. Buffer areas shall contain 1, a continuous screen of planting of vertical habitat in the center of the strip, not less than 6 feet in height at the time of occupancy, so as to maintain a dense screen year-round. At least 50% of the plantings shall consist of evergreens and shall be evenly spaced along the length of the buffer strip. In lieu of continuous plantings, a solid brick, stone, or wood fence not less than 6 feet in height, no more than 8 feet in height, may be established and maintained with plantings and allow no more than 20% of the amount required above. 2, a landscaped area containing a mixture of shade trees, deciduous shrubs, and evergreens with a minimum of 1 shade tree, at least 2 inches in caliber at 0.6 inch above the finished grade, within each 35 linear feet, and well-maintained grass, bark mulch, or other ground cover to the depth of the developed portions of the lot. Where the planning board determines that the planting of trees is impractical, permit applicant may substitute shrubbery for trees. 3 shrubs and hedges shall be at least 2.5 feet in height at the time of planting and have a spread of at least 18 inches. 4 grass is preferable to mulch where practical. 5 existing trees with a caliber of 6 inches or more shall be preserved wherever feasible. 6 deciduous trees shall be at least 2 inches in caliber as measured 6 inches above the root ball at the time of planting. Deciduous trees shall be expected to reach a height of 20 feet within 10 years after planting. 7 evergreens shall be a minimum of 8 feet in height at the time of planting and shall be spaced 5 feet on center when planted in a single row. When planted in a double row, each row of evergreens shall be spaced 10 feet on center. These minimum standards may be reduced by the planning board subject to recommendation of an arborist, landscape architect, or other competent individual.
Other competent.
Yeah, I think, you know, the 50%, minimum 50% of evergreens, I can't think of anything worse than a row of arborvitaes.
Yes.
You see them, I mean, it's the most unnatural thing. And people put them up because they're evergreen and they block everything out. But, I mean, a row of red maples that burst in color in the spring and they're beautiful leaves all summer, and then the leaves go down. But it's a much more attractive way to landscape a street front, I think. But that's my personal opinion.
We can change it after the public hearing.
And,
Okay.
yeah, and this is for buffer areas too. Don't think it's specifically calling out street trees.
I don't know what good it does to plant arborvitaes anymore because they all get
They
eaten by the
they
deer.
get grazed up
Right.
5 feet.
Yeah.
It's an all-you-can-eat
So you can
buffet.
see, you can see right through them.
All right, the architectural standards section. The building design and construction drawings and documents shall be prepared by a registered architect. We strongly encourage that the building design and construction be LEED certified or be LEED certifiable for the purpose of energy efficiency, material durability, healthy interior and exterior building environment. Buildings, it is strongly encouraged that the exterior walls of structures and buildings shall be constructed of brick, stone, concrete, or other similar durable materials to have an attractive appearance and maintain architectural integrity. A, buildings with a footprint larger than 2,000 square feet constructed in the Westport Gateway District shall meet the following requirements. In order to avoid long blank outside walls, walls shall not be longer than 30 feet without an articulation, such as but not limited to a window, footprint offset, siding change, poster. Whatever articulation is chosen, the same articulation shall be repeated for more than 1/3 the length of the wall. No outside wall longer than 100 feet shall meet the roof without a change in height, which is significant enough to visually break the long straight line. D, all roof units such as but not limited to HVAC units, elevator overruns, vent pipes, or other such paraphernalia shall not be visible when standing at ground level at the same elevation as the building. Roofs shall be designed to accommodate solar panels. E, covered entryways, porches shall be provided for public entrances into the building before entry doors.
Yeah, I'm a little skeptical how all of that will be put into practice, but we'll see. I think there's,
Can you build LEED with concrete? Concrete's the
concrete
worst.
is a terrible,
Concrete's the worst
Carbon.
environmental material there is.
Yep. Traffic study. The planning board may require the applicant to do a traffic impact study at the applicant's expense. Traffic study shall evaluate and provide projected traffic generation from the development onto state highways and local roads, traffic service for the development, capacity of the road network, including roads and intersections, and safety issues using egress and ingress of the development. An initial traffic impact assessment report shall include the projected AM and PM peak traffic, the average daily traffic, and the hourly distribution of vehicles, including with respect to gross vehicle weight and future number of conditions on adjacent state or local roads for the proposed project. This report shall also include a review of any existing master plans relating to traffic in the vicinity of the proposed project, and assessment of the impact of that project upon implementation of the master plan, and analysis of that project's impact on proposed takings for roadway improvements. Finally, this report shall include a designation and review of the possible locations of curb cuts on nearby parcels, demonstrating consistency with the master plan. Mitigation may be required of the applicant/developer. B, the planning board may engage the services of a consultant paid for by the applicant under GLC 44, section 53A or 53G to conduct an independent analysis of the factual assertions and conclusions of the traffic impact assessment report. C, if the traffic impact study indicates a reduction in the level of service of 2 or more levels, e.g. from level A to level C or level D or lower, the applicant shall submit a mitigation plan to the planning board. Demonstration of mitigation is sufficient to prevent a reduction in level of service below level C. The planning board may not issue a special permit unless the mitigation achieves a level of service of C or greater, unless there are extraordinary circumstances as determined and described by the planning board to justify the issuance of a special permit. Action by the planning board. The planning board may grant a special permit for a WGP where it makes the following findings. The proposed WGP complies with the requirements of this section. The proposed WGP does not cause substantial detriment to the neighborhood after considering the following factors: noise during the construction and operational phases, pedestrian and vehicular traffic, environmental degradation or harm, visual impact caused by the character and scale of structures, other consequences as may be set forth in the development impact statement for the WGP. C, the planning board may impose conditions in the grant of any special permit, including but not limited to the following: that all construction or infrastructure improvements shall be completed within a specific time period, that all aspects of the WGP, including authorized uses, building occupancy, and intensity of use, shall remain in substantial conformance with the plans and other documents submitted to the planning board as part of the special permit proceeding, unless modification of the special permit for the WGP is authorized after public hearing by the planning board. And finally, that a performance guarantee suitable to the planning board may be required. Consultant review. The board may engage a professional engineer and or other technical consultant to advise the planning board and to review application plans and documents in the application phase and the construction phase. The applicant shall pay for the cost of consultant review pursuant to procedures specified in MGLC 44, section 53G or section 53A. Further, the building inspector may engage to inspect to confirm compliance with special permit requirements. Refusal to pay the necessary fees shall be a basis to deny the special permit relief. And that is it for that section. We have one really small one left for the unrestricted district. And what will be done here is it's proposed to replace the unrestricted district with the rural agricultural district. This does require a corresponding map amendment and text references in the bylaw, and we would then delete references to the unrestricted district. The unrestricted district is outlined in yellow on that map, and you can see a aquifer protection overlay in the hashed blue over top of that district. And the rationale behind replacing the unrestricted district is that it can allow a whole host of different uses that may not be compatible and likely would not be compatible with the adjacent residential uses, in addition to needing to protect the aquifer. This is also not far from Bread and Cheese Brook as well, so that's another consideration.
So just one wordsmithing is, we don't have a rural agricultural district, we have a residential agricultural district.
Also in the gateway, we didn't make parking, we don't have parking regulations in that district.
There's no set parking standard. I think the effect of Section B is to
Adequate parking.
provide the planning board discretion to assess the amount of parking that's necessary given the proposed uses. So
And not to
there's-
go by the state requirements.
Right, there's no hard and fast defined number of you need 231 parking spaces. So it's up
Okay.
to the discretion of the planning board to determine whether or not adequate parking is being provided.
Because if, particularly if we were to, it's the only bus route in town. If we were to allow multifamily housing and to, connections to Fall River and the train and all that kind of stuff. If we think about that, those kinds of planning, then we don't want, someone with a two-bedroom home to have 3 parking spaces, I mean, John's earlier comment about, cities now, I mean, Cambridge has 0 parking requirements. Matter of fact, they penalize you if you have to pay if you put parking spaces in. They want you to do that. And, and there are places like that, Singapore, they put all their money in the mass transit system, costs $97,000 to put your car on the road. That's the fees and taxes. So, but if we wanted to, in the multifamily housing, have relatively low, I mean, there are suburban locations now. We did master planning in Westwood Station. And there's a T station and they run a shuttle. And the parking ratio there is 0.72.
So would you like to see for a more defined standard to be incorporated in here?
I always take the subway to get here from my house.
Right.
You take the fast train.
Oh, you do?
I don't know. I'm leaving it flexible gives us something, but it's, I could tell you that most developers that you're trying to attract are gonna wanna know, well, what am I getting into here? If I come in if I do a multifamily housing project with a bus stop right in front of me, and I say 0.75 parking spaces, is that what I'm gonna say? Oh, no, this is Westport, you need a car, you have to have 2 cars in every household. Right. Because you can't get anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. The composition of the planning board can change and
Yeah.
it could be, I think you all are more amenable to reducing parking, but, that's not always a guarantee, so I think it's really good.
I'm of 2 minds, but I'll send you some notes on that, and also on the short-term rental. I do owe you something on. I thought we were going to go the other way this evening, but I will send you stuff on the ownership and all that stuff. It's a dog's breakfast now. It's a terrible. It's the way it's drafted is terrible.
Is the ownership or the everything?
No, the ownership section.
Oh.
You can make it much shorter and simpler.
Yeah.
So Jim, I have a question. Is this now going to, what we're seeing here is a draft, obviously, of this, and it's going to.
The select board, and
To
then
the
they'll
select
send it
board.
back here for public hearing.
And we're also
then
going to
we
put
have a
this
public
science
hearing,
and technology.
then we can wordsmith it more after the hearing to listen to people.
I see.
Yeah, so,
Good. We're looking at this, I haven't seen this before, so, just want to, we made some.
we've reviewed this with Russ before.
I don't believe he presented this.
It didn't look like this, but
Did he?
Well, I'm not on the committee, but I got a copy and it looks like, I mean, it doesn't.
Yeah, where'd you get that copy? That must be somebody's.
Anyway, we've seen it.
Okay.
We've been through it, so.
Yeah.
Jerry, one last,
Yeah, I saw you had a public comment period, but it went by real fast, so I think that's to keep me shut up, right? When it said that.
No, you
Just a
can provide us
question.
an
On the first part of this, I didn't get a chance to really read it very well. I couldn't hear it well. I saw the part where it said, you know, you classify the types of businesses that would go there. In the gateway, I'm talking about gateway now. And then it said that those that were not classifiable would go to the zoning board. I want to be clear that I assume it's not like 40B with the state law that if it goes to the zoning board, the zoning board now takes over that entire process, right?
Yeah.
So we want to
it's just
be
a
clear.
determination of the use.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I want to be clear on that. Because you guys are the experts on that gateway thing.
Yeah, so if it went to the BZA, you know, like Jim was saying, candy shop versus a bakery, you would say, yes, this is, you know, similar use, it would come back to us.
I still, in a serious way, feel that that's something that we folks could decide by vote, whether it belongs there or not, maybe more than we would, because you're more expert in all of those different categories, you know, landscaping and this and that and so forth, as to whether it would be appropriate. So you might want to consider that. But now, as far as this taking away the unrestricted area, I think it's about time.
Yes.
We do that. I think it's over time that we do that. We did adjust it some years ago, but my question is that I heard Jim mention something about the rural part, but I couldn't hear what that was. Is this adding another new type of district?
No, it's.
Sorry, that was my fault. I wrote the wrong thing.
Okay, so it'll be residential, correct?
It's a residential agricultural district.
What that brings to mind is, have you any idea at all, have you done any review of how many properties, when we make this change, how many properties are going to become legally non-conforming?
I think there's maybe one.
Maybe one?
Maybe one.
The junkyard? Junkyard's out of it now, right?
Junkyard's not in it.
I think the junkyard's what we replaced in the past. I'm just curious whether we're gonna have a lot of legally non-conforming out of this.
I don't believe so, Terry. I mean, I've looked in there, and it's mostly open and residential.
And swamp.
Yeah.
And swamp.
It's a big swamp.
Yeah, okay.
So-
I just was curious about that part.
Yeah, I don't think
And
much
it's
is
not adding.
I don't think much can be done in there, that's why
It's just
we're
a-
restricted
Yeah.
to tackle, otherwise.
Yeah, and I'm looking at an overview of the area right now, it looks almost entirely residential, there's maybe.
And the real reason I'm sitting here is all I did want to be polite and wait to find out. You talked about a work session next week, but I didn't hear the time.
We don't have
I
the
want to put
time
it in the
yet.
calendar.
He's going to poll the people in both committees and then
All right.
come back to us.
Yeah.
So it would be like in the late afternoon probably.
I hope.
Okay.
So we need a motion to send this to the select board?
Can we have a motion to send, so we already had a work session a couple of weeks ago on December 19th. And we didn't make a motion at that time to send those amendments to the select board. So can we have a motion to send the amendments to zoning bylaw section 9.1, assisted and independent living facilities, zoning bylaw section 7.7, intensity regulations, yard or setback requirements, and zoning bylaw section 6.6, Science and Technology Overlay District. Zoning bylaw, section 5.4 for the Westport Gateway District and corresponding map amendment. And zoning bylaw and map amendment for the unrestricted district to replace it with the residential agricultural district.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Some of these
Move
zoning
to
maps,
adjourn.
We're gonna be able to read street and stuff.
Second.
Okay,
We just adjourned.
we adjourned.